Hello. Hey. You're good. You're gonna go get the girls? This one. Oh, feeling sick. No, I gotta stay for planning commission. All right. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Recording in progress.
Like you have a sign to go, Marta. Are we ready, Charlie? So we're in charge. Welcome to our December 27th work session meeting for the Western Weber Planning Commission. Wow, must have been Christmas or something. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Okay. Everyone is present and accounted for tonight. That's good. And I guess we'll kick off our work session. Charlie, is there anything you wanted to start with, or are we good to go?
I think we're good. Just dive right in if you're okay with it.
All right. Welcome.
Oh, maybe I should tell Steve not to bring one of those packets down. I've got a bunch of new stuff being printed right now.
Okay. All right. So we can get started without that. Okay. Well, no. We'll start with our work session item number WS1, a discussion for the potential of a rezone from A1 to RE15 at the Stagecoach subdivision. Applicant is Lync Construction. And you can give us some preface to this?
Not a whole ton of it, actually. Just inviting the applicant up to the microphone. This was a request. It's on the agenda today as at the request of the applicant. We haven't put a whole bunch of effort into doing a rezone analysis of it, but they'd like to chat with you guys, kind of get a feel for where you guys are. You've seen it once before. We had a little bit of confusing direction at the time from the county commission. We've had a little bit of clarification from the county commission. Basically, when they're talking about 30-acre lots, they're talking about 30-acre on the gross. And so take the gross square footage of the property, divide it by 15,000 square feet. That's about what we're talking about when in terms of lot sizes. And as long as it averages out to about 15,000 square feet on the gross, the commission sounds like they're going to be okay with those kind of proposals. So smaller lots, bigger lots, as long as it's not any bigger than 15,000 total.
Okay.
So I guess we'll invite the applicant up to the screen.
Good holiday week. It's good to see a full quorum. That's impressive. Thanks for having this work session for us.
This is important stuff.
Yes. Pat Burns, 1407 North Mountain Road. So this is, I've actually got a couple developments to talk to you guys about. But the first one is Stagecoach. And this is the one that we did have a work session on it here a month-ish ago. And after that work session, I did go meet with all three of the commissioners. I went over it because kind of the last work session we talked about weren't sure which direction they wanted to go, where we were going to go, what was going on. So I did have a really good meeting with them and kind of went over everything with them that I kind of went with you guys over, and I'll kind of hit some of the main points again. I've done a lot of work with a lot of the big national builders and trying to put together, asking them what it is that is selling, so that I don't just get stuck into my little world of what I have and what I can do and what I can make. How I present it to them is, hey, look, instead of me getting a square peg and trying to put it in your round hole, why don't we work together and I find out what exactly meets your criteria to turn into your board of directors or whatever it is that's buying it, and what's selling and why and who and how and what. And so it's a lot of discussion with all of the big boys that are around here anyway. And kind of what we've come to a conclusion was there's, if you can get 3 products in one development, your diversity, your absorption, your desirability, that's the number one thing that we can create now. And then a lot of stuff like what Charlie was talking about with planning too, is what they're talking about is mixing in some of the bigger lots with smaller lots. You drive through the bigger lots, then you hit the smaller lots, and then you hit some more bigger lots. And so it's kind of just a mix and a match of, instead of just hitting one subdivision of teeny tiny lots, one subdivision of small lots, and one subdivision of big lots, you kind of walk through and I mean, you drive through, I apologize. And then of course they talked about trail connectivity and stuff. But the main thing that I wanted to find out was what sizes they wanted, what their desire was, because in the end they sell to way more people and way more areas than I would ever be able to reach. But anyway, so Stagecoach is actually a design of, I spent the majority of the time and several hours with each one of them, was DR Horton, Woodside, and David Weekly Homes, and talking. I did talk to several others, but those are the 3 I spent the most amount of time with. And this was, from all the information I could collaborate from the 3 of them, this is what I came up with. And that's the design that we put into Stagecoach. So anyway, that's where that design came from, and that's why. As you look, you see when you come in, you go through some bigger lots, and then the outside has bigger lots.
Yeah.
And then you keep all the,
We don't have.
oh, I apologize. I thought I have a couple. We put it in a packet, I thought, but
Did you upload it, the new version?
I thought we did. How many copies do we have, John?
If it's on Frontier, I'll pull it up. If the new version has been pulled up.
Sure. Has anything changed from the last time? Because it seemed like we seen something very similar to this.
Yeah, we did just the road alignments and a few things that I met with Charlie and some of the, we met with the engineers as well. And we actually have one more change that I met with Charlie, and he was asking to change a few road things and a couple other minor things. But that, until we get the zone change and then find out exactly what you guys want, because everything's been kind of a moving target. But I just want to kind of tell you how I came up with why I designed that. It wasn't just hey, let me see what I can put in there, and I threw it against the wall and that's what came out. So from listening to you guys and trying to decipher and figure out what the best thing for me to present to you guys is, first thing, not the first thing, but we actually was met with parks. So we're trying to finalize with the Parks Department of how we can start structuring these developments, and especially the ones I have. And I've also met with 2 of the other guys that are developing right in the same area that I am. Instead of them doing one thing, me doing one thing, what we want to do is kind of do more of a master plan, and I'm trying to help the Parks Department too come up with an idea of what they want to see and what we can provide. So we're all kind of on the same page. So the Parks Department's got, you guys know, across the street with local dairy, they've got that piece. It's already been donated to the Parks Department. I believe it's 9.5 acres. Yeah, 9.5 acres. And so they have a rough sketch of what they kind of want it to look like. I'm talking with Roger and going through their design, and this is roughly what we've kind of talked about, and nothing's set in stone because he's got to meet with his board, and we're actually going to meet with the board tomorrow night. And so we can get stuff at least starting with discussions and, telling them what we could do, what we'd like to do, what they'd like to do, what we can, kind of work together. So roughly we're kind of deciding on the north side of that 9.5 acres, we might as well start with a parking lot, because they don't have anything set up yet to take. Even if we had a check to give them, it'd be hard for them to take it. Not a check, sorry, a fee. If we did a fee for each lot or each development, or whatever, then it'd be hard for them to take it. They're still working that out. But what they could do is say, we've got this park, we got the design. How about you come put in the parking lot? Come put in the bathroom. Let's start with the basics of what we have to have and what they need. And then, even if I took a dozer and a track hoe and made a flat park for the kids to play in till we got more stuff decided, not the parking lot, but it sounded kind of bad, I guess. And then, just start working with the Parks Department of, we don't know how bad the soil is. I don't know anything about it. It could be a $100,000 parking lot, a $300,000 parking lot. It's 4 feet deep of horrible dirt. You never know. So I don't know if we have to, I've been over there 1,000 times. Do we have to pipe the front of it? What do we have to do to get it? I just don't know yet. So there's a lot to look and go into that. So we're going to work with the Parks Department directly. And obviously I don't want to speak for them, but we have met with them, and that's kind of the direction we're going, is helping everybody decide what to do. And then as far as we met with Charlie to kind of like he did with that piece, the M&T zone, he presented it with a zone with a name and had all the ordinances and stuff. We're kind of working with Charlie, and he's got, what'd you say, at least 100 pages of it done or so, Charlie? So he's got a bit worked on. And so we met and helped collaborate, come up with ideas, and so that we can come to you guys with a master plan that meets the same ordinances that Charlie's going to present. And so that we're not creating something and then Charlie's going to present something that we can't mesh with. So we're working directly with Charlie to try to get the ordinance, the master plan community, and everything all in one. So I hope that makes sense what I'm trying to say. So I apologize. I definitely would have brought plans for everybody, and I just assumed it would have been on the.
Well, I like that it's more of a collaborative effort on behalf of, several of the developers that are in that area. I think that's a good approach. I think that there's more value in that than everybody doing their own thing. So I like to hear that. That's good. Definitely a good thing in my eyes. So you're making progress, Charlie.
Try
Are these going to be private
go.
streets?
I'm enjoying watching Pat riff. This is great.
He does good. Yeah. All right.
The 25-foot or the 50-foot private?
No, that was as we were just talking with Charlie, that was another planning idea of, hey, we could make this a different type of a road, so you don't have as much, they're smaller, it's tighter little area right there. We did do an 80-foot road. The main road going through is 80 foot. And then we kind of tightened up a couple of the other, and this is just a suggestion, it's not, by all means, I'll do exactly whatever you guys want. We were trying to just put a bunch of different ideas together. And where it's got the detention basin, open space right there at the very bottom. Now, we'll probably have 3 different detention bases throughout the subdivision. That's just the amount of square footage we need. And so that's where this is just conceptual. I just wanted to show, hey, we have it planned. This is how much we need. And so we'll probably put one to the southwest corner and possibly one closer to the I meant northwest, southwest, and then where there is one right there too. Anyway, now I'm kind of rambling, but
Well, I'll take you off the hook for a second. We'll start getting some questions for you.
Perfect.
Commissioners. Questions?
So I'm just wondering, for those of you familiar with the area, what is the access to this area? How close are we to our major collectors? Or, because this is a lot of density, which I like, but what kind of roads do we have to access this?
It's almost there, but it's not quite all the way. That's one of the issues, and it's done good because there's a development across the street from this one, Winston Park, right? They've done their side. You guys will do yours.
we'll do ours.
But from where this little house is here going to the east is going to be a section
You-
that
Your 3,500 is right here, and that's half a mile. What is that? Is that what's that road? What's the size of that road? What's your terminology for it? Okay, but is it a collector? Is it a minor collector? Major collector. So it's a fair size facility, and it runs from, at that size, it runs from 12th Street south all the way.
Roy.
All the way to Davis.
Yeah. Roy screwed up over on their side and did a Mickey Mouse thing. Yeah. Yeah.
That was a UDOT issue,
Oh, okay.
more so than a Roy.
Well, it didn't turn out as well as it probably could have if it would have been, and
3,500 should have just kept
straight. Yeah. But anyway, it's a good size.
And 1800 South is a major road. We don't want to have frontage on 1800 South,
No.
correctly,
No.
correct? But there's no frontage planned. I'm just a little concerned, like these bulb outs. If we're connecting right next to other neighborhoods, right? It's probably something you've looked at. If we're next to other neighborhoods, it might be better to have through streets there. I can see on 1800 South, we don't want to.
I think there's lots of connection points into that other property on this drawing.
There are, but they're actually fairly far apart. Like, do they meet your standards for distance?
So that's one of the things that Pat and I talked a little bit about, and we may need another street connection. We were talking about, so one of the things you'll see, it's not quite ready for tonight's discussion, but it's block lengths that are 8. What's that? Yeah. So block lengths that are 8 times the minimum lot width of that area. And so we'll just be doing the math here to kind of take a look at that. We know that our current block distances of a maximum of 1,300 is just way too big, especially when you get the smaller lot sizes in here. So, and then one thing you will see in tonight's discussion that you haven't seen yet is pathway connectivity. We're asking for a pathway intersection every 500 feet, just like we had adopted in the cluster subdivision code. So that's one thing that you'll definitely need to work on this. As far as these streets down in here, I'm not too concerned about it. I think it'd be nice if this street can come down and make a nice connection right here, but they're lining this intersection up with what's happening across the street, which has already been approved. So is what it is.
It's a 50.
Yep. Yeah, so I sat down with Pat and I just mentioned it'd be nice to see, pathway going through here, a little pathway going through here, something coming up through here. A street connection there.
I've got a question for you. So on these lots, given the size that they are, what's the unit, what are the units, what's the housing going to look like?
So I actually have a whole slideshow presentation for you guys. I'll bring it and show you exactly what's built. So these frontages, the smallest ones, they're actually 62 feet. Like they were pretty exact of what, and all three of them were the exact same 62 feet. So they've got it figured out to a science, what goes, what looks good, what fits good. And that was another thing I was going to bring up and talk to. It'd be great to talk now, is the setbacks. So where you have a house next to a house, 8 and 8, which is 16 feet. I think that's great. On these smaller lots, what they do is they put the garages next to each other. So if you have a garage and a garage, and then you do 5 and 5. And so makes for a better setback. You're not, windows aren't attached to each other. You're looking literally saying hi to each other. But that's the garages attached. Then you have 16 feet between the two homes. So that was one thing I was going to ask too, if we could, if you'd be okay in my master plan for this would be those setbacks, but very strict, not on a corner, obviously, and then not, it'd be garage to garage only. 5 feet on each property
On each
line, so you'd
property,
have
so that's
10 feet. Yeah, a total of 13 feet side setback, so 5 and 8.
What I like about that.
Yes,
Yes, next time they went up to takes away. We want to hold over the problem, so we can get rid of those. Keep our tight, but definitely just own, I think that really, market, that's probably what.
absolutely, yeah. These are the next affordable homes next to townhomes. Correct, individually owned, yeah, there's no, yep, you're exactly right. And we're putting some xeriscape in, little bit of green grass, to make it all mix and match. And I mean, they turn out, when I come with the slideshow, I've got a lot of different pictures and just different things to show you guys of how this is planned. And the community of Daybreak does a lot of this, and these are just very well planned communities. So it won't just be a mishmash of what can go in there.
I'm getting the feeling that, that you guys speak up here. I'm getting the feeling that, there's warmth to this, but I think some more conception of this would be
Sure.
real helpful, to give us some perspective.
And I don't know how this works because I haven't done it. I would even be willing to take you guys on a field trip because this exists. It's not like I got multiple examples. I don't know how that works, if I could do that or not, or just tell you guys do it, but I'd gladly take you, whatever you want to do. I own a car lot. We have a couple Lamborghinis and some Ferraris. They're cool to drive, but I'm just saying.
So what size homes would sit on those 6,000 square foot? Just what would be the kind of the floor area of a home that sits on?
So anywhere between 1,200 to probably, I think some of them, don't hold me to this. I think some of them can go as much as 1,100, but don't hold me to that. I have it. I just don't have it.
That's multi-level, right? Huh? That'd be 2 levels, 2, 3 levels.
Some would be 2, some would be single level, because just you really are getting a mirage, a lot of different styles.
So are you proposing this comes through with the development agreement style one? Because we're changing, I mean, right now, we're looking at for in this potential zone, we're looking at the maximum percentage of the lot covered by a building is 30%. And so that would be pushing it there. Even at that, our frontages are still at 100 feet in this zone. So we would have to work something similar to that master development agreement on this.
What I'd like to propose is kind of like a R15 MPC zone, but working with Charlie at the same time, make sure it matches for the new ordinance for an RE15 zone. I don't know. RE15 is I think that's they average out to a 1,500 square foot or 15,000 square foot is what the average. The number of doors. averages out to
You
it.
got 40 acres, you get 3 units per acre, basically, you got 120 units.
Correct. I don't take and I say, okay, I have, this one is 68, so this one has to be much.
They were okay with going off of
Yeah.
gross.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were. Because after our meeting, I sat with them for a long time, explained. It's basically what I've just kind of told you guys, the same thing, and made sure that everybody was on the same page.
We haven't decided what that designation is yet, but I yeah, the RE, the E and RE kind of is a misnomer here because once we get down to the 6,000 square foot lots, it's kind of hard to call that an estate. And RE 15 is residential estate, even though I do have a 6,000 square foot lot and I do tell people I'm going home to the estate. So yeah, it just depends on how
Whatever you feel.
That's right. Although RE 15, if you look through the uses, it allows animals. You're not going to want animals on 6,000 square foot lots. So I think what we want to do is look at if when we see projects like this that are not doing just flat 15,000 square feet, just say, you know, in that zone, even if you have a larger than 15,000 square foot lot, no animals or fowl, no, you know, agricultural uses need to be more like gardening types of uses as opposed to stinky things.
And I think a lot of that's in your code.
Mhm.
That's in there. I mean, there's some tweaks when we get into that section of the meeting, but I think there's a lot of that. It built into what you sent us.
You got it. You got it. Yeah, if we use the form base, so I don't know if we're going to use form base on this particular area yet. I would love actually to, in the end, go everywhere form base, but actually technically we're more of a hybrid form base in what you said there. But I mean, if
Stuff should carry though from what we have in here.
I agree.
related to Uses and stuff like that, especially when we're looking at this.
I agree. I think in the long run, the intent of that form-based zone is hopefully to replace a lot of the Euclidean zones that we have. It's just easier to use, frankly, more straightforward. But we'll see kind of how that plays out because I don't know how the commissioners are going to feel overall on. Yeah, it's a new enough idea. It's a lot easier to look at a map and say, wow, that's painted yellow. That means this zone and that means these uses, as opposed to, well, that street is this, and now it's got to look like that on a Sunday afternoon and like that or whatever.
Well, looking at this layout, you only have one lot that's over 20,000 square feet, and really, for the most part, they're all under 15. So, you know, if the commission's good with the total land mass being divided, you know, by 15,000 square feet, fine.
Yeah.
Not a problem. But as far as some of the uses go, I have concerns. And then when we get to that form base, we'll have more conversation about
Great.
that.
Great.
But at the same time, yeah, this isn't going to be, if this doesn't end up being a master planned area,
Mhm.
or there's not an agreement of some kind, then our code needs to have some reflection of what can be in here, because this isn't a place for animals.
Yeah, agreed.
Last comment.
No,
So,
go right ahead.
the layout, aside from some connectivity and the size homes, none of that bothers me. I think that's well researched. I think that's what we need. For me, it's just the community structure to support it. How much do we need to require from all of these developments to make sure we have parks, roads, we're gonna have a lot more roads to make sure we can access these? Then that's why right now we're taking, you know, we're considering an A1 to an R. So there has to be a considerable investment into the community, because community is set up for A1. And we need to have a community that's set up for residential zones. So, I mean, we're gonna need the difference between West Weaver and Daybreak. You know, there are facilities, we're talking large recreational facilities, we're talking large parks, very well planned out roads. So I don't know what that standard is. We need to figure out what that standard is. Every time we come with these awesome developments, we'll make sure we're supporting them with enough funds to support the community so they don't die. People come out here and say it's too congested. I don't have the roads to get to where I want to. I'm driving forever to get to my kids' schools and community things. That's my parting word.
I've got a concern on the roads, and thank you, Sarah. You kind of reminded me of it. My only concern is what are you going to do with snow? And yeah, granted, I know we don't see it very much anymore, but we have seen it this year. So it's still out there. It's still something we're gonna have to deal with.
Yes.
So that's a little bit concerning because I've seen some of these smaller roads in private neighborhoods where, you know, the snow gets stacked up in the middle of the cul-de-sac. And then the fire department doesn't like that. And then, you know, I mean, and so on and so on. So then people have to start taking it on their yards and then there's a big fight over that. So that's something that concerns me when I see roads that small. What are you going to do with that product? So anyway, just something to be thinking
No, that's
about
a
as we
great
go through the
question. I'll
process.
actually bring that up to my engineers and see what, I did a subdivision in Harrisville, and they brought up the same exact question. It was in cul-de-sacs because we had that same problem. And I'm not saying we do this here, but what we did there was in the cul-de-sac on the actual recorded Mylar, it had an area where I couldn't put driveways. And we called it the snow load area where they could push the snow to, and it worked great.
Right.
Harrisville was very happy with it. It worked. So the engineers came up with that. And they're like, hey, this is what we're, so I'll ask them and then see what we've done in the past too. And
Yeah, you almost need something with these smaller
Mhm.
roads. I don't mind the smaller roads. I'm concerned about what are we gonna do with the snow? And then that leads to safety issues and,
Yeah.
you know. Anyway.
oh, to
commissioners?
bring up one more thing, I apologize.
Oh, sure, go right ahead.
With safety and connectivity and what I would propose too in the development agreement would be just like you guys have out here for the crossing walks to cross Washington. If I'm gonna put money and put trails and get everything for a park, I don't want them just crossing 1800 like Frogger. So I would pay for putting in, you push the button and the lights flash and go across, because if I lived out here, that's what I would want my kids to be able to do. And if with the school is going in just a couple blocks down the road. I mean, there's going to be a lot of kids walking in this area. And especially the park that Roger was showing, it's going to be an awesome park. It'll be well used in my opinion. So
I think that's a great idea, Pat, just knowing that environment right now, and there's never been any, it's something that's not had a lot of traffic, that road, but people knowing that they haven't maintained the 40 miles an hour, right? It's been
Yeah.
kind of a speedway. So I think that'd be a good improvement there. I do have a question for you though.
Sure.
On these smaller lots, how big is their driveway? Is it just like a single car, 2-car wide,
everything will be 2-car.
2-car? Okay.
Mhm.
Because that's my big concern with the smaller street is everybody ends up parking on the road, right? And then you have issues with that when having a smaller road, people trying to get through it. So
Even townhomes now, I don't design, I have 3 big townhome projects going. I don't even design a townhome without 2 cars now. Anybody who does that, every developer I've ever talked to, and I prefer to learn from their mistakes, and that is everything needs 2 cars, minimum. You just can't get away. You end up shooting yourself in the foot.
So that's, I guess, just to clarify, because I know some of them consider 2 cars is you can fit one in the garage and you can fit one in front of that, 2 cars side by side.
2
right?
cars.
Okay.
Really.
Commissioners, anything else?
Any thought or work on 1800 outside of your frontage improvements?
As far as more work for.
Improving it as far as, I mean, because just like. you
I
know,
think, so across the street, they did almost to the end of the 1800. I know the house and the next house to the east,
East on the north side.
they're gonna want to develop relatively soon. But I would propose where the park goes, we do the same thing there. And as developers, we come in and that's what we do. We make it accurate because the rest of the development's already done. The Ropaletta Dairy, where Ropaletta still live, theirs isn't done, but the other part, everything else has been done. I know that Gary's got it on his book, and I don't want to speak for them, but Gary's got on his books to redo
1800.
1800 in front between my subdivision and Ski Lake. What's it called now?
Halcyon.
Halcyon.
Down to 43.
Yeah, he's gonna be Gary's redoing that right there because he's actually having us bid to do some of the work and to process. So I know that's Again, I don't
My
wanna speak
concern's
for
more going to
them.
the east. I mean, we're gonna add. What's your number? 4 trips? Oh, Bill's sleeping. 4 trips? 10 trips per unit, per lot per day. So we're gonna add 1,200 new trips onto 1,800. Most of it's going to the east. Our choke points at the east. I mean, we've got a collector there on 3,500. Look at 22. I mean, 22 is the same way. They've had them developments. We've got a full cross section, except for the last 500 feet.
Yeah,
And,
let me work on that. That's a good question.
I mean,
I'm
that's
not
where
sure.
more of my concern is.
Sure.
I get the going to the west, and I get it's a pathway for the kids or something like that, but my concern is all these cars are gonna head out and they're gonna go to the east to 3,500, and then they're
Right.
gonna head to the north to 12th Street.
Well, and I've got smart fields that we're putting in that's gonna use that because we're not gonna go to 14, that's for sure. And then I know this other developer across that wants to put a bridge in and do this other stuff, so.
I
That'll
mean,
be all
it's
eaten up,
1,800 is
so,
gonna
yeah.
be a busy road.
Busy
and
road.
if
I
you develop
completely
further
agree.
west and everything
Yeah.
else, so that's where my concern is on.
I
on this.
agree.
I don't like the lots that small, but I understand why they're there. I mean, I get that's where it's going, and I think you've done good work working, seeing the concern we have of, in order to go here, where's the benefit of the community where they're gonna play? I think you've worked with Roger, it sounds like pretty well. The last step in my eyes or my opinion is that road deal.
Okay, let me get back. I'll do some homework on that.
Yeah, that, I have that same concern. I think that's really important on these roads, is that we get as much done with them as we can. And given the amount of traffic that's gonna load up here, I completely agree with that. And the problem is we haven't done a good job of that in the past. And that's pretty evident everywhere you go. And even when there's new developments, you know,
Mhm.
they'll have their 500 feet or 600 feet. And in some instances, they only did 2 or 3 feet off the edge of the existing asphalt that was there on 16 feet of existing asphalt. It really didn't make a whole lot of difference.
Sure.
So, yeah, that's definitely got to be addressed.
I do absolutely agree with you guys, but I do want to tell you one thing. I've already done the front of mine, the entire area, and it cost me $850,000 just, and again, I was just about to say that, and that was some big, huge pipe, and we had to bring the telephone company out to hold the telephone pole. I mean, it was a job. It was a job.
Well, we're
But-
not, I don't think anybody's, gonna hold feet to the fire as long as everybody's happy, as long as Park's happy, as long.
Oh, yeah,
as,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
I just mean,
but
as
I-
we progress, it does get very expensive to, and
But it-
Bill, I want to help and work and try to figure that out because I have a lot of traffic going on this road. I agree with you.
All right, commissioners, anything else?
That's why the substandard road ordinance is the way it is. It's
Mhm.
meant to, we'll start at the main collector and build off of
back.
it. If you're not going to do that, how are we gonna find a solution to get that accomplished?
Mhm.
And I mean, you know better than anybody, because you own a ton of ground on the backside of the tracks on 7,500, and nothing's gonna happen until we find another way in there. But
Yep.
so, I mean, the same thing kind of applies here, just in a little bit smaller scale.
And I'm doing the same thing in Plain City. I have a Weber County road in Plain City. My subdivision's in Plain City, but it's a very substandard road. They're having me take and add 4 feet of asphalt to the entire road. So, yeah, it sucks, but that's what we agreed to do, and it makes sense when you're bringing that much traffic in.
So this is just a question that's toss up here, whoever can answer it. Didn't we see something to the east of this development or this potential development? No, on up to 3,500,
On the other side of 3,500.
on the east side of 3,500?
No, I thought there was a 1 acre.
Yeah, I was thinking property through there. Okay, all right. Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions or concerns or comments for the app?
Okay, I have a silly question. And it's 50-foot road. How much of that is asphalt?
10 feet, I'm just kidding. I think it was 30. I think it's 30. It might even be 32. I can't remember.
It's either 30 or 32, and the 50, really, I don't know, has Gary give the thumbs up on that yet?
Gary didn't like it, but he didn't absolutely say no. He just said he didn't like it. And he doesn't like trails and doesn't like pathways. He doesn't like any of that, but he loves sidewalk
Hey.
and no trees.
No, you're gonna have trees and Charlie's got a good streetscape, so I'll fight that one out with Gary, but I mean, I'm good with the smaller cross section of asphalt. We just don't have parking on it, but we need to build it with, the streetscapes and,
Absolutely.
or not necessarily the streetscapes, but the trails and
Mhm.
stuff like
What
that.
I love the urban
The pathway.
design. This
Yeah.
needs to stay urban, look urban, even though we're tightening the density, it still needs to look urban.
Yep, I
don't
agree.
Disagree. And we
Yeah.
can do some cool LID stuff too with it. We can do it in the car strips and minor things, but
Yeah.
it is, you're right.
I mean, that's what that whole streetscape based around, I feel is an LED type
Mhm.
concept.
Yep.
You're still gonna have some sort of a drainage system in there, but you can still have the LED feature as well, which hopefully might alleviate some of your retention issues through the rest of the subdivision. Low impact
Low-
development. So your sheet flowing more water into, instead of having a traditional raised park strip, you'll have a little wider park strip where you can attempt to infiltrate. Some areas it'll work, some areas it won't.
Yeah.
Our county engineer's got a mindset that anything out west, they're never gonna make it work, and I disagree. I don't. There's places it'll work. Trust me, you should have seen the pond sitting in my backyard this morning, and now that the lovely sand we live on, there ain't no water left. It'll infiltrate.
Is that what their idea is the water table's too high for it to work?
And that's why it's being challenging. The type of soil and, but like if you jump over to his smart acre development, that water will disappear so fast that.
Yeah.
So it is site specific, I agree.
Pat, just real quick, curious, the larger lots, how big are those houses gonna be?
Anywhere from, we've got a 1600 to a 2400.
Okay.
The different sizes and out there we can go with my geotech. We can have 10-foot base, just kidding. Some of those where we have the road bumped up almost 3 feet, we can do with some daylight basements and some other stuff. We can get some easy, cheaper square footage. But I was just kidding.
Put basement in and make sure you pump all that water into the sewer.
There you
They'll
go.
run the sewer too.
Yeah. Nobody would do that.
I like the idea across the street. Doesn't that one have a basement restriction on it?
It does.
It
if I
does. You can do, I think it was
remember.
3.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it does.
and I'm not against that.
Or am I?
Yeah. In that area.
Seems like we raised the height limit on Winston.
Yeah, the roads are built up pretty high, so you'd have, even from the top of road, you're 3 feet before you hit virgin
Right.
soil, so you could do a daylight out of it still and be, but not a basement like we're used to building.
Okay. Well, you're pointed in the direction now. At the end of the day, though, does this become HOA? What is this? What is there anything to this, or is it?
No,
just
this
all
is designed to
individual?
not have an HOA so that we can create a development without the
I
HOA.
wanted to clarify that I understood that, right? Thank you.
Which, and then so to that point, Charlie, is that where in the master development agreement you would have, because I know in the form-based code, which I liked about it. So like maintenance of the pathway and stuff, that comes on the responsibility of the property owners that adjoin it, right?
Yep, that's actually in another document that we'll be looking at tonight as well, just generally addressing pathways as a whole, including ensuring it's clear that maintenance responsibility. We already have it in a weird corner of our code. It's kind of hard to find where the adjacent property owner is responsible for the pathway, as long as it's a smaller than 5 acre parcel. I can't remember exactly how it's worded, but we'll see that tonight. But yeah, that's exactly the thought
So-
process is
But where we don't have a zone code that really goes to this, it just has to be spelled in that agreement.
in the
right?
development agreement, right?
Okay.
And either that or we work through our development agreement while we're working on the ordinance. I kind of think the ordinance might take us a little bit of time because we're trying to do two ordinances at once. But I mean, maybe we'll get lucky.
Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else?
Okay, thanks, guys.
Did you hear, did you get out of this what you needed to get out of it to go forward?
I think so. I think. There you go. Yeah. As long as it wasn't that, then I don't even. Okay.
Thank you.
Go back to your original approved design.
Cluster? You want that cluster?
No,
The name says it all. All right, next item on our work session agenda, WS2, a discussion item for Singletree Acres rezone request A1 to RE15.
So, Mr. Chairman, we don't, the next two, well, three items you guys had tabled from your last meeting to this meeting today. And so we just kind of wanted to hopefully get a somewhat abbreviated conversation with you guys on what it is you're looking for to get these projects moving forward. I wanted to make sure it's clear that all three of these projects would have to have a development agreement in order for us to be able to implement anything because we don't have the ordinance in place. And I heard that as a big concern. And so I guess the question right now, and we've got both the applicant as well as Tammy, the planner in the room. If you've got any questions for them, but what do we need or what can you offer us to get this project moving forward?
Chair, I can start if you're ready.
Go right ahead.
So my two biggest things on, I mean, I guess on 2 and 3, I mean, I have the same concerns on both. What is the agreement, you know, the in lieu of, or what's going back to the parks? And how are we accommodating the substandard road ordinance?
Fantastic.
I mean, that's the two biggest hurdles that I see both of these developments having.
I thought
My
substandard road would come up and I do have an alternative version of substandard in a draft right here next to me, but we're going to get to a little bit later in the meeting. I wasn't quite sure how we wanted to organize this meeting because I don't want the applicants to sit and wait too long. And so there's one part of the conversation. The other side of the conversation is parks and open space. We may want to invite the applicants up and just ask them if they've worked with the park district to figure out if they've come to a conclusion or a solution.
So a question on that, Charlie, that I've been trying to rack in my head is because we're kind of setting a standard here, but we have yet to work with Roger to understand what Roger wants. Because now we're telling it's just like Pat. I mean, yeah, I like that Pat's got a couple other developers and they went in together, but don't we need to set a baseline? I think Sarah brought it up earlier. We've got to set a standard. And if we don't set it, I mean, this is our one time. In my opinion of this general plan, it's like we're starting over. We got a clean slate. We can't go back and say, well, you didn't make him or you didn't make him. Well, this is where we're setting we're drawing the line in the sand a little bit. We're setting a precedence essentially. So let's make sure we do it right in the beginning. And so what Pat has to give to the parks is the same. Yeah, he's doing 120 and Singletree Acres is 30. So they all need to give the same by their density. So let's set that by a density. And, you know, if you're going to go in and develop it, that's what you bring in.
So right now, because this is a legislative action, no precedence is being set. It's a fairness question for sure. And if one person gets more than the other person down the road, it still is a legislative decision. So it is up to some legislative discretion. But sometimes someone comes in on somebody else's coattails and makes a little bit more money because somebody else put more money down in the first place. Not fun to hear, but it happens. If we had an ordinance in place, yes, I 100% agree. And we need to find that metric and that bar. I have been working with Roger to try and figure out what their needs are. They are working through a master plan process. They've got to figure out what that dollar amount is that they're going to be asking for of each applicant on a residence by residence basis. Dollar amount that is not tied to impact, just dollar amount that they're comfortable hearing in order to say we're good with a rezone. Until that time, however, there's a lot of improvements that can be taking place. And so I guess the question is maybe we ask Roger to work with Pat and find out, all right, what's 120 divided by a parking lot and a bathroom, and maybe that's the dollar amount. And then we turn to Mr. Buck from Singletree and say, well, we know that amount is this, so write a check. We could do that. It makes it nice and easy, nice and clean, or we could wait for Roger to tell us he's satisfied with whatever it is that they're offering.
I think we need both. I mean, we need Roger to say yes, you know, Roger and his board to say, yes, they agree to this. But I think for the cleanliness and the simplicity of it, with as many as we have coming in, that's where the other one comes in and says, look, Roger needs that bathroom in that parking lot. If you feel you can build it to the Parks District standards for cheaper than writing the check for it, you have the equipment and that's not an overhead cost. go
do it.
build the park
Yep.
or go build the parking lot. But you know, the next developer that might not have that ability and he figured, well, it's easier for me to cut a check. But at least, you know, Roger's either getting that amenity or that dollar amount so he can build it.
I agree. 100% agree.
So Charlie, I think for me, lines, it has to go, it can't be just developer park district talking, I mean. Because you have to get the- So it has to. So it's not, well, I only need this here, so, you know. 50,000 on this project, million on that project. That's the fear, is that they're going to be different, and it happens with substandard roads too, but the substandard road. Even out, they're okay, because you purchase land further away. Civilization.
Yep.
So if you decide to pay less for your land. Then you pay more if you're about to get there.
Yep.
And then the person that bought their land for more, when she's already here. Anyway, I think it's from.
Sounds like community west of Salt Lake.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. Well,
So when someone buys land, the already that someone else bought the road or put the road in for it, they're gonna pay less for that land.
Yep.
So that's why the substandard road thing, that's why it works. So if you buy land way out, just plan on paying more road.
Yep.
That's fine. Now with the Parks District, it's a bit different because it's everywhere. And we do have the cluster subdivision code to go off of it. Okay, if you provided all this, will be expected of you. And so I think saying an idea to go from, okay, what does it cost to buy this much land? I mean, it'd be an average. But how much is that agricultural land? What were we asking before? And it doesn't make sense now.
That's what, when Roger and I sat down with the Parks Board, I asked them to put the number together. 'Cause it's not just acreage, right? It's acreage and infrastructure. So how much does it cost for this much acreage? Then how much does it cost to install improvements on that? And we can get a per residence number. We just don't have that yet. And it's gonna take a little bit of time to do.
I don't think it's that difficult because I thought kind of similar to where you're going with that is we know what their hard costs are. We know what their infrastructure costs are. We know an asking price for a lot. So then you take the profit and say, okay, 10% of that goes to the parks as your in lieu of fee.
We don't know what the hard costs are and we don't know what the infrastructure costs are because they don't know what's in the parks or where the parks are gonna be located. or
We
how
know
big.
it as far as their development. Take it off there. So you
Oh, I
take,
see what you're saying.
you take this 40-acre development and Pat's gonna know, and Gary's gonna know, Gary's got to sign off on it,
Mhm.
off his escrow of what he puts in. So you know what he's, I mean, we know right there, he's already put in 850,000 just on the 1800 side. That's all costs that we can get hard numbers from. We know what they paid for it. He knows what he's gonna sell the lots for.
Mhm.
So you just cost minus expenses, 10% goes to the parks and the rest of it's yours.
Sure. If that's the number, that's.
I'm just saying that it's a
Chair.
simpler.
Can I get a word in here? Sure. Actually, the developer never knows what he's gonna get out of the property. It's all left up to the government where the interest rates are at. So that's not feasible, but you can go to all the small communities around here that have a city. And they have a parks fee built right into their billing permit fee.
This
And
has
you
got to
can
be
take-
different.
It
This is on
never
top of-
is. The builder is on for that. And when he sells his deal, it's paid for
This is a,
up front.
in my opinion, it's completely different than an impact fee. And what you're referring
That's the
to.
way they do it, as an impact fee, and it's simple because each lot has so many cars coming in and out of it. So many trips, and they just figure that up and say, we're gonna put parks here, here, and here. Eventually, when we get the money, and they have a master fee for it.
Which I agree, and that's if we're leaving it at the A1 zoning that it currently sits at today. But we're giving them, I guess, more. Because they're coming in and asking for the rezone, and so that's why we're asking for, in addition to get it down to your 3rd-acre density. That's why we want to see, because now you're taking this whole piece, because you could do it today without asking for any of this. You could come in and do the cluster code like he got approved before.
I thought we got rid of that.
No, cluster code.
It's coming. Getting rid of it. It's coming.
Yeah, it's still there today, but
What I'm saying is, The way you explained it, Bryn, we can't be co-developers with the developer.
Yeah, and maybe that way to
Unless-
figure the fee. in
Unless
lieu
the
is
county
there.
wants to take the losses too when that happens. And it does.
Oh, yeah. I mean, maybe that's not the way we figure that number, but I mean, we've got to find a way to figure that number that's got to come. Because now you're adding, 120 new units, and say each one of those units now have 2 little kids there. You've got 240 more little kids, and you got a 6,000 square foot. You've got a 6,000 square foot lot. You're going to put a 1,700 square foot home on it, meeting the setbacks and everything. You don't got very much yard for them kids to go play. So the only option is to go down the road to the park. So somehow this has got to pay into, or just leave it as a acre zone density and build it at that, in my opinion.
Or a true third acre.
How would you guys feel if we said, I'm just taking a number off the top of my head, $1,000 a lot at recording? So if we were talking about Pat's project, we'd be looking at $140,000 at recording, donated to the park district. Now, Pat could go to Roger and say, I've either got $140,000 for you, or I've got a parking lot I can build, which would cost you $200,000, but I could figure out how to do it for less than that. I mean, we could just start with a number and go from there. Now, I think that'll get us at least from point A to point B. We are still going to have to change from point A to point B, because once the park district knows how many parks they want, where they want them, what the hardscape and landscaping and all that is going to be inside of those parks, we can actually back in the number from there. It's going to be the calculation is going to be very similar to an impact fee. It's just what level of service are we looking for? How many acres per resident are we asking for here? How much playground area and soccer field per resident are we looking for here? And there's a dollar. We need them to finish their master plan and then put a financial price tag to that, and we can get there. And I don't
But
think they're too far away from that.
What if we looked at it from the point, so we know what this one was before. He had 62 lots, I believe, in here.
Stagecoach?
What it was approved with before. So basically, we're now doubling that.
Yep.
The amount of building lots in this subdivision.
Mhm.
So by taking it to this new third acre zone, you're doubling your density, you're doubling everything in it.
Mhm.
And I just don't feel, I mean, and that one had a ton of open space with it. Remember, we had nice equestrian barns and an equestrian trail and an arena and stuff like that. With the larger lot in the back.
Mhm.
So that's where I feel the community would have got, it might have been private, but some of it would have been open to the community or to the public and the people that lived in there. Now you're not getting any of that. You're getting rooftops across the whole thing.
Yep.
And I just don't see that $100,000 per lot equating to doing much when, I mean, a bathroom to build Roger's bathroom is going to cost him 300,000 just for that bathroom building. I just don't think that the trade-offs, in my opinion, fair.
Maybe it's the dollar amount isn't quite right, but I agree with the concept. Let's
I do
figure out a
too.
dollar amount
And-
per house.
Mhm.
And let's work to figure out what that dollar amount is. And $1,000 is probably not high enough, but
The cities that surround, they're between 15 and 2,200. So somewhere in the middle there.
Yeah, honestly, if they had their impact fee study done, we'd just be able to drop in that impact fee, and we start from the top and say, all right, if it's 2,200, we'll start there, and then they can still charge their impact fees for their system expansions, while we're asking for project improvement fees at the beginning for just project enhancements.
I mean, impact fees, you're doing two things with an impact fee though, because you're buying existing capacity in some sorts and then part of it's going to building new capacity. So
Yeah, and we definitely can't call it an impact fee,
No.
because if we called it an impact fee, then we wouldn't be able to charge an impact fee later for a number of reasons.
and
Double
at this point,
taxation.
I mean, I just hope that the community gets the message that they're purchasing agricultural land.
Mhm.
So they can't sell it at residential prices, because that the difference between agricultural land and residential land, that difference needs to go to the community, not to the landowner, because
agree with that.
Me either.
there's probably going to be some gains in the middle, but the community around, as we can tell from all of our meetings, does not benefit when people are flipping their farms. They want the open space. They want to be alone. Now, that doesn't stop the farmer from selling their land. By any means, they should be able to sell, but it's not fair that the farmer gets all the profit from the community changing the zoning and that all of the other residents take it. So there has to be a balance. Yes, people who sell the land will make money, but all of that profit can't go to the landowner because that hurts the rest of the community. So
Well, I
some
don't-
sort of balance.
I got two,
Forego my comments on that, but I don't agree.
I've got 2,000 per lot or whatever Roger wants. I'm gonna write the ordinance to say exactly that. It's a good start. We'll start there, and if we can't get people to come to agreement, or if it just gets to be too hard, we can come back and redo the math. I honestly, once Roger is done with or once the park district is done with all of the financial side of things, we can figure this out. Going back over to Singletree Acres. Singletree Acres is just outside of half a mile away from the existing parkland over on well, south of this one here. And so, I mean, if I were in the park district shoes, I'd say, you know what, you're close enough. I mean, it's a stone's throw away. Go ahead and make improvements to this park that doesn't have any improvements in it right now. Or the other side of this is, you know, if the park district wanted to, they'd say, you know what, you're far enough away. We want a park within half a mile of every home. And that's, sorry, the half mile that I'm talking about, this being is as the crow flies. If I were the park district, I'd say half a mile as the kid walks. So I guess my question for you guys is on Singletree. Are we going to ask Mr. Buck to focus on parks and acreage, or are we going to allow him to entertain something with the existing park area?
I don't think that's a discussion for us. Or a decision for, I mean, I look at this as the same thing. In our deal, it says, or other review agency comments and concerns.
Yep.
This is no different than the water district or the irrigation. This is where Rogers board needs to give us a letter and say,
Perfect.
these are our conditions.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Until they meet those conditions, it's no different than drinking water.
And that
It
is,
doesn't move.
that's exactly what Warren West Warren Park District will be doing with us as well. So, yep, that's
Give a
great.
letter that says they're good, this is what they're giving them, because really, at the end of the day, they're their own entity. We just have to work with them just like the other entities.
And that's why I'm struggling with this whole conversation, because we're part of it, yes. But are we the police?
No,
You
Nope.
know, and that's, I'm gonna leave that as a question. Be the police. This is another district that has full say in how this plays out. They have full say to ask what they want to ask, what their needs are. And the only thing that I see our role as being in this, at least at this point in time, and I think that's where everyone's concern comes with, is because there's nothing established yet, and we're so green on all of this. The Parks District is just getting itself established, basically. And the new general plan is just getting established, that we don't want to see a lot of this water pass under the bridge. And I'm not trying to stick it to anybody, but you know, I think that it's kind of to Sarah's point a little bit, is that I want to make sure that the community gets everything out of it that the community should get out of it. Yeah. So that's where I'm having this struggle with this whole participation on the planning commission's role in this thing. So anyway.
No, great observation. I had a really good conversation with Randy Giordano, Warren West Warren Water, and discussing the M&T zone and Black Pine project. And you know, they've got some needs that they have, and just said, well, I mean, do you want to make your contract with the developer and keep us out of it? Because if you do, that's great. We'd love to see that. But if you need us to kind of run the heavy a little bit, we can. And I think it's going to be the same way with the Park District until they get fully established and they've got the administrative staff and they've got the ability to work with the developers and they know exactly what they're looking for. I think that's kind of where we will be.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Little-
It's, you're gonna weigh in quite a bit and help, you know, guide, but at the end of the day, their board has to approve it.
Yep.
And then it's our
We
our
can't
job
make
to
them take
pull
a
it.
park, right? Okay, so
Charlie,
on,
before you go on, I have a question that I think relates to this. During our last session, you mentioned that if we put in there that there's going to be a development agreement between basically you and the developer, right?
Mhm.
That doesn't necessarily come back through this process. It can be worked out with staff, right?
well, it'd be county commission, but technically, yeah, we'll do the negotiation until the county commission.
And that's the part that I have a little bit, I don't know if I want to say I have an issue with, but I have concerns with. Because I feel like that kind of skips the process of what we're trying to do here. So it's like, well, if we just say we have a development agreement, but behind closed doors, we can make these arrangements and then it moves on. That doesn't give the community a chance, which is why I think all of us are on here is so that we can represent the community to have voice in that. So
I agree with you. Now, when we talk about a development agreement and the planning commission not seeing the development agreement, we're talking about the planning commission not seeing the whereas, now therefore, here's some definitions, here's what force majeure means, here's what severability is. And then there's a small little nugget on the inside of that development agreement that says, this is how your development's going to be built. Planning commission will see this is how your development is going to be built. That is part of our staff report, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You guys will see every single point in there. And that's really, we take those points that you guys give us that we recommend to you, and then you get back to us as good things to do or add to them. We make a development agreement out of that. So you do see it, you just don't see all the legal ease that goes into it. And
so because I'm naive, is that something that the other commissioners, is that something that we should be seeing, or like, is there something that could be put in there that we'd be afterwards being like, oh, I wish I would have known about that?
In my opinion, our role is to make sure it fits the zoning and the surrounding areas. If we don't see the final, okay, is it gonna 62-foot setbacks and 8-foot? And if we don't see that type of stuff, then I feel we haven't done our job. That's what we look at in that development agreement.
I agree.
Now, the whereas
Yeah, and that's what I
and the
mean,
legal, that's why they have Liam and Charlie.
Well,
That-
that's what I'm trying to
yeah.
understand is because I don't know what we would see and wouldn't see. So
And I don't think, I mean, other than JDC Ranch, we really haven't seen a big development agreement come in front of us because we haven't had to, when we do the cluster subdivision and stuff like that, it was always just what the ordinance said. And then they work that stuff out later. So I think goes back into that uncharted territory we haven't been in yet, because we're gonna see more of them hopefully until we get the code to back it up.
Yeah, I guess the only one that you guys have really had to deal with is first it was the movie studio, and then on the same property, it flipped to something else, and you guys never did see the development agreement, but you did have some pretty lengthy conditions that you wanted to see in that development agreement.
The county and went to Slaterville.
And then we never did get to finish that development agreement because Marriott Slaterville picked it up. Yeah, that's right. And so that's exactly right. Now, something for you guys to know, however, is it's not the development agreement that'll do this. It's just the negotiation that happens between the county commission, the developer, with the staff in the middle after the planning commission makes a recommendation. Sometimes, for example, with JDC, after the first time they came to you, there were some modifications that the county commissioners wanted to see. And that was going to get executed through a development agreement. That developer, out of an abundance of caution and fear that they were going to be protested by other folks in other cities near them, wanted it to be on your guys' docket. Most developers are just fine with it not being on your docket. And that's why you saw that whole thing. In fact, you didn't technically see the whole thing because the one that Steve got signed is this thick. And it includes the entire current ordinance, which I thought was overkill, but not Steve's overkill, somebody else overkill. So anyway, just trying to protect you guys from doing more work than you absolutely need to, but doing the community's work, doing the planning work is certainly important for you guys to be doing.
thank you for clarification.
You bet.
Off topic on that note, did it get approved last week?
It did. Yep.
2-3? Or
Yep. 2-1.
2-1, sorry.
Yep. You guessed it.
I missed that name.
So, Mr. Chairman, what I'm hearing out of this for both Singletree and Anselmi Acres is, number one, we need to hear from the Park District what they're comfortable with. But in lieu of that, $2,000 a lot. Is that what we're going with? Or do we want to go $2,000 a lot?
You know what?
That's what he says.
I don't know that that's a number we should be putting on this.
Okay, that's I was kind of in the same same persuasion at first. So whatever Roger's comfortable with.
That's my opinion. I don't know, commissioners, you chime in.
Well, it's gotta be consistent is all that I think is fair.
So in other words, what we want to do is maybe recommend that the Parks District comes up with. some
Roger's
sort of figure.
definitely had a lot more experience than we have.
I don't think it's fair to the developer or Roger for us to make that guesstimate, because that's all it'd be, right?
Well, I wouldn't feel comfortable. I don't think we can legally to say it has to be this when we're forcing it on the Parks District where they're their own entity.
So there's
I think we strongly encourage, ask for the moon, Roger. Ask for as much as you can get, because guess what? The negotiation, you work it back.
Okay.
So
There we go. Good. You finally coaxed Roger to speak.
He's a little more comfortable now that he's not in his recliner.
That's right. And the last meeting, sitting in that recliner between blowing my nose and coughing and everything else. I mean, that was an awful long meeting that had a whale of a lot of wasted time. Anyway. I have met with Stagecoach. I have met with Singletree. I've met with Halcyon. I've met with Smart Fields.
Hey, Roger, sorry, can you pull the microphone down?
Okay, as you need my name and address, Roger Heslop, 1657 South, 4700 West, Chair of the Parks Board. I have met with them. We have talked about different situations pertaining to their subdivisions, pertaining to their developments. I have been advised that Roger Heslop is not the one who is going to make the decision for these developers, because I have to take it to a board. And the board is the one who's going to have to take and make that decision. Tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, we will have one of those meetings, and all of the developers are invited, if they would like to show up and present to the board what they would like to see the board entertain as far as a mention. From some legal standpoints, you keep talking about a development fee for the development. We have not been able to find legal standing for that fee. When it comes to looking at the impact fees for the park district, there is a definite code that we have to follow, and starting tomorrow night, we will start that process, which means we have to advertise for 60 days before we can then ask for people to take and create for the park district an impact fee study there and all that stuff there. We're working on it as fast as we can. We want to get it taken care of. Meanwhile, we are moving ahead. I'm still meeting with developers, and we'll be glad to continue to do so. There, I agree that, Charlie has mentioned a dollar figure that may or may not be reasonable. I don't know. You're talking to a former school teacher, not a developer, when it comes to try and negotiate things that is brand new to my background and, those sort of things. I do have a list, but when it comes to looking at the internet, whether those things is what's going to actually cost, we have been told that it'll be somewhere between $1 million to $1.5 million to develop the 9.5 acres. Well, you look at the amount of ground that's already developed, already out there that we can't touch, and they're going to be the ones that's going to benefit from the park as much as anyone else. They're not going to basically be paying anything towards that fee and that amount. I agree we've got to start someplace. I agree that any future development needs to take and pay a share to develop the community, but we're working on it and doing it as fast and as quick as we can legally. So, just bear with us. We're treading new water, and I've got a board that they are no more experienced than I am when it comes to some of these situations there as far as working on it. Do you have any other questions for me?
Commissioners?
Question. So our Parks Department is basically gonna be like the school board.
It already is set up that way.
But the Parks District is set up as a special services district by the vote of the people there. And as a result, we were charged to develop parks for the benefit of the social, emotional, and physical well-being of the community. That's our charge that was given to us at the time the park board was established by the Lieutenant Governor's Office of the state of Utah. And that, so that's what we're looking at. We do not want it to become like one of our neighboring cities to the south of us, where they're in the news almost every night for things that communities don't want to be known in the news for. And the difference was in their developing and their planning out, they allowed the developers to maximize all of their benefits independently. And there was nobody who really sat back to look at the community until all of the land was basically gobbled up and all of the land was taken care of, sold off. And now they get their list of things that, we want to be ahead of the game. And whatever it's going to take to be able to get that accomplished, we do appreciate your efforts in looking at, trying to help us, get the parks. I mean, there's a level of service that we're going to have to maintain. And if we take all of the open space that has already been designated by past ordinance and that all be converted into parks, our level of service would be impossible to maintain, according to the statistics that at least the preliminary stuff we've been doing on our impact fees are telling us. So, we've got to be sensible as we develop. We do want to take and have quality parks in the area.
So I have a question. This should be like a joint, like there's gonna be new kids here in the subdivisions, but there's also kids that go to parks that live there now. So it somehow it has to come between a joint deal between the county supporting so much through some type of fee and the developer supporting so much between the fee. And then it would be just like the school part. And then where the development comes, you could say, okay, we got so many kids in this area, we need a park here, and go purchase the land and have each group participate in that, both the county and the revenue that you're getting from the developers.
Right now, because there are no parks in our community area, the youth of the district are participating in the parks and recreation programs of our surrounding cities.
Mhm.
They charge our families a fee because they are outside of their park district for the youth to participate. And there's at least 2 of the cities who have turned and said, we don't have space on the teams for them to participate in. And as such, we're starting to see some of our youth who have not been able to participate in some outdoor sports recreation type programs because there are not facilities. That's why we only wish that 100 years ago, someone would have had this discussion and had the backbone to take and set up areas so that we could have it, so that, those parks were basically maintained at that point by the LDS Church. And the last meeting, you just gave away one of those parks when you approved a seminary building that went on top of the ground that was there. That's their right, but that also reduced the recreational opportunities for that neighborhood because it now is, a facility that once was open space. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, as Mr. Heslop was speaking, I was just running some quick numbers based on the numbers that Mr. Heslop gave us. And I just wanted to make sure it's clear to everyone, the impact fee requirements and the fee requirements that we're asking for, kind of the pay to play to get your rezone are 2 different things. So legally, definitely as a park district, the impact fee requirements are going to need to come into play, but we can get you a little bit more in advance, and that really is for someone to get 30 acre lots. But just using the numbers from the 9.5 acre park at $1.5 million. If we were to charge $2,000 per lot, and we were just looking for 6 acre neighborhood parks at a minimum. I said 6. I know we were talking about 5 earlier, but 6 just in case. At $2,000 a lot, you'd need to approve 473 lots to get a full park. Now, in this meeting today, we were talking about 120 lots. So you need 4 what is that? Just under 4 40-acre parcels.
But then you're only talking 160 acres, which is minimal in my eyes as it starts developing around. I mean, really, if you took this 120 and then you took Anselmi's, which is almost 40,
Mhm.
you take the Singletree, which is 30,
Mhm.
then you take, when we look at Halcyon, I think that's a whole nother ball of worms we got to look at because they're already in a preservation
Open space area.
Yeah, that one's gonna be extremely high compared to these. But I mean, really, we've had one meeting and we've had 3 different rezones in this area. 4 when they bring Smart Acres in, because Smart's gonna come and do the same thing.
Yep.
You know, that number that's coming in there. I mean, how many lots you got there? You got over 200.
According to my numbers and according to Frontier, it's 346 additional lots that are waiting for rezone within the mile and a half radius of the Taylor Landing. Park.
See, there, that builds your park.
There you go. Yep. At $2,000 a lot. So there's a starting point.
You make that pass and I'm done. I'm good. I'll take the 2,000.
I know it's close enough, but park area big enough.
10 acres.
Mhm.
I mean, that's a
Well,
big park.
we have looked at it. It's basically 4 soccer fields, 2 softball fields, 4 racquetball courts, volleyball court, pavilion, a large playground area. There, as far as, area that would be there. We ultimately would like to take and see that area expanded as the neighborhood or as the community grows. And there's 40 acres to the east side of it, which was part of the open space and the open space contract for the original Sunset Equestrian Park to proceed forward. And I'm not right sure which of about 4 different entities controls that right now, because the names have changed on it. About every 2 months, you get a different name that appears on the property. And I don't know why or how, but we would like to take and see 25-30 acres ultimately in that area, but it would also serve basically the Taylor community area as a total community park.
Will we have in?
At the present time, we do not foresee, nor did the information from our master plan indicate to us that we needed to be too concerned about an indoor facility. As far as an indoor pool or indoor tracks or, racquetball courts or, physical fitness facilities that's there. We have talked about Boweries and whether they need to be enclosed or not, similar to what the West Warren Park District has done. And if that were the case, that would basically serve 2 purposes. One, it would give us an area large enough for us to be able to hold public meetings. And if it were enclosed, so it could be enclosed year round, then it would become a park area office as well as a Bowery that could be rented out for family picnics and events and activities.
Part of not being able.
Mhm. Yes. Mhm. Well, and ultimately what we would like to see as soon as we can get a park established and get something established, then once we've got impact fees that are coming in, we really would like to take and see some facilities. We have been in discussion with the high school. They currently are very closed-minded when it comes to any expansion, when it comes to any joint facilities or using their facilities or opening up their campus. And it frustrates me just a little bit about who's paying their bill, that they can't allow somebody to play on their soccer field when their teams are not playing on the soccer field. But, the school district at the present time is not negotiating or wanting to talk to us or participate with us in a facility that would allow us to share. They did it with West Haven shortly. It was just that I think I hit the developer of the new high school at the wrong time. And I got told that it was a closed campus. We would love to take. And the park out there in South Ogden, we have looked at it. The problem is we don't see $5 million to develop a park that they have got in our immediate future. We would love to see one built like that, but meanwhile, we know we have to live within a budget too.
I guess the bottom line, talk about right now, how many residents?
It's about 1,500 people, if you're talking about 3 people per household. Mhm.
But how many people? Sure, that planning.
There are some national standards. When it comes to level of service, it really comes down to a community desire. Some communities are just fine with crowded parks. Other communities would like a little bit more space. And it's kind of like trails. I mean, as a county as a whole, we have a ton of miles of trails that serve a relatively small population. And we're saying that level of service is our baseline level of service for every new home that's being built. We want to create that much more trail feed. And so, yep, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well, and the experience, right? The experience changes when it is very busy. It's kind of similar to what we're dealing with up around Pine View Reservoir. I mean, how many square feet of beach does one family need in order to have a good experience? So it's the same thing with parks. It really needs to be set by the community, and we're looking to the park district to
Right now,
depending on the park.
4300 West is the exercise pathway.
Exercise
trail,
alley.
for the community. Because it's closed on one end and you go out there and any day of the week, there are numerous people who are walking up and down that street, particularly from where the Taylor Church is to the north. But that's basically our only path and our only trail. And the amount that it's used, we need to take and make sure every subdivision has trails through it, around it, whatever. The park is planning on a trail all the way around the outside of it. There so that we can, get some exercise and handle things that way. But I would like to take, and maybe a question for Charlie. I'd love to take and invite the park board to come in and meet with the commissioners and sit down and let's have a good, heart to heart talk about what can and can't. Do you want the commissioners in that meeting, or
Sure.
do you want to just set it up?
Planning commissioners or county commissioners?
Well, this group,
We could do that at our next work session if you'd like.
okay?
To clarify that with the commission, with the 3 commissioners as well, right?
Well,
Or not?
we presented the master plan to the commissioners. They have accepted it and they have adopted it. We do have one amendment tomorrow night that will be added to it as a result of our public hearing on it. So we do have our master plan now in place. We're starting the process for the impact fees tomorrow night. And I mean, the commissioners They told me to go out and start charging an impact fee before the first of the year. When I met with them. Well, unfortunately, Susie Beckert out of Zion's Bancorp has told us that there are a few things that we have to go through and do before we can just establish a fee. We're working through the process.
Well, back to your meeting request. Did you want to have a meeting with your board, the planning commission and the commission, or just your board and the planning commission?
I would recommend that we do it. His board and the planning commission, and then they can take what we took from that to the
To
county
the
commission.
commission.
You get too many things going on, I think we get.
Okay.
But I think it would be very helpful for us as a planning commission, meet with the Parks District and then they can take the recommendation to the commission on what they'd like to do.
Comment, Chair. I agree with that, except for you gotta have the fee to talk about first. In other words, the work's already gotta be done or it's a useless meeting.
Well,
To Charlie's point, could we go to this and say, if we're good with 2,000, they're good with 2,000, they want to back it up, that's what the county's gonna put on every one of these rezones, 2,000 per lot, and then that check just goes to them.
That's the number I'm walking away from this meeting with, unless you guys tell me.
I mean, are you guys okay with that? If yes. Has impact fees they charge it as a building permit.
And then
This is to get their rezone. Yep, this is to get the density.
And just to make sure it's clear for the record in case anybody gets their hands on the record and tries to sue the county or for whatever reason. There's a difference between a project improvement and a system improvement. And under the Impact Fee Facilities Act, a system improvement is what you can charge an impact fee. Project improvement is a different thing. And if somebody, for example, is putting an undue burden on 1800 South with their new subdivision, you can ask them to put a bunch of new asphalt there on the shoulder of that roadway, because it is directly proportionate and directly related to their project. That's a project fee. Now, you can't necessarily go ask them to improve 2200 South. They're not on 2200 South. 2200 South improvements need to come down the line, and they do definitely need to happen. And everybody who moves into the subdivision will eventually use 2200 South. Therefore, that's a system, and you can charge a system improvement through impact fees. So going back to Pat's project, 120 lots or whatever, sure, ask them to put a little bit of improvements on 1800, and you're not running afoul of any impact fee rule. Or have them pay a fee in lieu and have the county go and put that asphalt down. We're going to talk a little bit more about that as we look at our substandard road ordinance update that I have written out right here.
So just one question to that, just for my clarification, Charlie. So say Pat wants to, we know his number's 240,000. Say Pat wants to go in and improve. He's got the equipment and the skills and the ability from his own crews to go build that parking lot. Roger can put a dollar amount on that parking lot and say, yeah, we know that parking lot's going to cost us 240,000. So yes, could they work an agreement between them that says Pat's going to build the parking lot. If he can do it for 120 and still meet their standards, that's his ability
It's
to
still a $240,000
improvement to the community.
Park.
Yes.
And I am fully in favor of
Okay,
looking
so-
at any in lieu of and, that sort of thing that can be of equal value. Again, it's a school teacher who has no clue what it costs for.
Well, he can build a parking lot a lot cheaper because there's not as much red tape he's got to go through. But when you as a district now go and bid it out and go through all your hoops, it's going to cost you that, but not him.
That's right.
But as long as that trade-off's there,
That's right.
where you feel like you got your benefit, the community did, and he made a little bit more money, at least that's still on the table, right?
That's right. So
Well,
we'll
might be escrow or a timeline or something to make sure
Yeah.
these improvements are done. That's
Yeah.
all.
So we'll say this dollar amount put in escrow held by the county until the park district is ready to take that money, or as otherwise negotiated by the park district.
Mhm.
Cool.
There we go.
I'll remember what it is. And the other thing is on substandard roads. Again, I've got something for us to go over, so I don't know if we're gonna have a good solution to that until we've gone over the ordinance. And that's on both of these projects, Anselmi and on Singletree.
Can we have a break?
Yeah.
There's probably now cold pizza in the back. I totally forgot. Sorry about that. We did promise you that we would feed you today.
Charlie, we forgive you for a lot.
Oh,
but
all right.
Cold pizza is.
We're going to take,
Find a microwave.
it's gonna take how much? 10 or 15? 5 and 10. We're gonna take a 10-minute break. Stay tuned. There. Okay. I think- Yeah. I don't know. We're gonna find out. Charlie. Okay.
No, not
Or-
different than.
Charlie, did we complete these items then?
Yeah. The street issue.
Okay. So we're on to our 4,700 form base.
So. We've got work session 4.
4, okay.
So I guess really the question that I have for you guys on work session 4, Terakee Village rezone discussion. You chatted about it in your last meeting, tabled it. One of the things that we did have with that packet is a copy of the form-based zone that we have already adopted in Western Weaver. What I did with what's in front of you is I just went through the entire form-based zone and said, all right, if we just looked at the broader area, adopted something based on the broader area, what would that look like? Or what could that look like? And that's what you have here. So I guess the question I have before we move into work session 5 is, would you guys like to discuss further the Terakee Village rezone before we dive deeper into the form base? Would you rather get your head wrapped around form base and then come back and answer the question about Terakee Village?
I think form base is how Terakee's gonna go. Let's get the form base code adopted and then it's done.
And I think, I don't want to speak for the applicant, but I think what the applicant has mentioned to me in the past is let's get this to the system pretty quick. He's got some time constraints. So maybe if you're comfortable with maybe with the way things are going, but the map itself becomes a source of concern, maybe we work with the applicant to move his project forward and then tweak the map in the coming months, if you're comfortable with that. So I think. Okay, all right, I think that's fair. Great. In that case, Mr. Chairman, why don't we move on to work session item 5, and then we'll come back to work session item 4 at the end of the meeting.
So work session item 5, West Weaver 4,700 form-based zoning ordinance.
My very first question for you, commissioners. What do you want this area to be called? You know, all of the form-based areas that we have in the Ogden Valley, they all have their unique community names.
Well, I know how you really upset a 94-year-old lady that's about that high with bad knees.
Oh,
You
no.
call a new high school Westfield High. Instead of right? He's lived out there for 70+ years.
Honestly, it doesn't make any sense to me. That seems like that should be Taylor High.
Yeah. Anyway,
Maybe there's already a Taylor High somewhere. I don't know. So, I mean, you can see what I have on the map here. It's just called West Weaver 4,700 area. I mean, Ogden Valley, we've got Eden area. Well, actually, we've got Old Town Eden and New Town Eden. So 2 different Edens.
I think it's West Weaver. Taylor, if we have one come up on the other side of the tracks by Taylor, then it would be Taylor.
so
Now, keep in mind, you've got a 3,500 West Village on 12th Street as well. And so if this is with the West Weaver Village or form-based regulating plan or whatever, maybe it just extends down to 3,500 when 3,500 is ready to develop. or 3,500
Is,
gets its own
is
name.
this a name that's going to go on in infamy or just for our
This
discussion?
is really how these names come into fruition is we tag it with something for now. And if we just tag it with the 4,700 West Village area, then maybe that's what it's called until it incorporates and they make their own name.
I'll make a suggestion, 47th and 9th. That puts us, that pinpoints us right there.
I like West Weaver Village better,
You know, okay.
but I'm the only one.
No,
like West Village.
Because it is West Weaver. 4,700 will be our heart.
The word village got really dicey in the Ogden Valley for some reason, because we are looking at areas that are a little more third acre and 1 acre lot standards on the same map. Do we still want to call that a village? Okay, I have no problems calling it a village. I am just fine with that.
Are we worried about that?
Okay. West Weaver Village, I just changed it. It's in ink.
We'll ask for the pronouns later.
Okay. Commissioners, hopefully you've had the chance to take a really good look at this. I don't want to go through and read in detail unless you want to go line by line, but I'd prefer just getting some feedback from you guys on what you've read. Mr. Chairman, maybe what I do is I just go page by page and ask if there are any questions or comments.
Whistle stop, West Weaver whistle stop.
Really?
That's a synonym to village.
I can write it down. Sounds a little more transit oriented, whistle stop.
Commissioners, how do you want to approach the discussion? Do you want to go page by page?
Page by
or do you just
page.
want to give?
My page.
Okay. Comments on page 1, if any. Okay, page 2. You'll notice if you read through all the way to the very end, we are talking about a little bit of transferable development rights, potentially. And so it is important that we clarify what those transferable development rights are.
Did that move from page 60?
I don't think so.
No. I
Okay.
think it's-
We'll dive into that one at 60.
Okay. Sounds good. Page 4. So technically, from your current code, line 134, oh wait, I missed a page 3, didn't I? Sorry. Page 3. Okay. 4, starting on line 134, street type, description and purpose. If you look at the way the current code is adopted, that all of this language is actually being moved from buried way down in the code. One of the errors or one of the issues with the way the code reads now is a lot of people just don't know what these color codes mean and what these street types are. So when you, excuse me, when you
This is printed.
when you look at the map and you see the color code on the page, the color of the street corresponds with the color code on the page. So this is different from Euclidean zoning where we paint the color of a lot or a lot of certain color and say that color means animals or that color means residential. In this case, we're painting a street and saying that that color on that street means this or that. Thank you. It does, and we'll get into the street development standards or the site development standards a little bit further in. So you got government and institutional streets. What's the difference between government and institutional streets and vehicle oriented? The next one down. Government and institutional streets is just the most permissive, the most relaxed in this street regulating plan. Now, we don't have any industrial streets in this street regulating plan for a reason. We just haven't dealt with industrial interfacing with these village areas yet. But when we say government and institutional and vehicle oriented, the only difference here really is government and institutional can occur in a government institution, government offices, buildings, schools, whatever can occur in one of these blue marked areas with very little site development standards. Whereas if they were to locate in the vehicle oriented commercial or mixed use, they'd have to follow some very specific site development standards. Okay. Mixed use, vehicle oriented. This is just car centric. Gas stations, grocery stores, post office. This is, you go and get your haircut and drive away, or you go through the car wash and drive away. This is, you still have site development standards where buildings are closer to the street, giving people a lot of opportunity, landowners a lot of opportunity to use their setbacks to their full maximum. The streets are a lot wider, so it's less of a concern on that. But in these particular locations, we see more permissions for drive-through restaurants, for example. Whereas in a mixed-use commercial street, your drive-through restaurants are restricted. Not prohibited, just restricted in how they can be oriented towards the street, right? So think about Riverdale Road. You got drive-through restaurants that their little queue stacking aisles, and where the window is right next to Riverdale Road. And that would be appropriate for vehicle-oriented commercial. But once you get to mixed-use commercial, those drive-through windows need to be tucked into the back. You know, you don't want to use your street frontage or your street space for that. Okay, next page. 5, multifamily residential, self-explanatory. Now we do have a height limit on government, vehicle-oriented, mixed use, and multifamily, and that height limit is 50 feet. So, and again, once you get up to that tall, you're converting to steel at some point, so it gets really costly. I mean, you're probably going to see only 4 stories in these areas. Okay, mid-block alley. That is not necessarily a street type with certain permissions and restrictions. That is the thinner lines that go between these blocks. So if you look at the street regulating plan, see the bigger, thicker lines, they follow the same block conventions that here in Auckland City, downtown area, we do. But then you've got these alleyways that go and get to the inside of that block. A number of the blocks on the street regulating plan, the inside of it are painted orange for multifamily, but the streets on the outside of the block are painted red for mixed use commercial. So what you can imagine is a 25th Street style development, and you pass through that first row of buildings that is retail facing 25th Street, and that's where you've got your condominium project that might be 4 stories tall with I'd say underground parking. That's probably not going to work in this area, with at grade parking and then the condos right above that or something. Okay. Small lot residential street. A small lot residential street, I think our minimum size standard on that is 3,000 square feet, and you can have up to 4 homes on it. So we're talking about townhomes in those particular cases. Medium lot residential street, those get a little bit bigger. Medium lot, we're talking about lots as small as 8,000 square feet. That's a little bit larger on the larger side for Auckland City standards, for example. So still pretty small lot. And that's single family, unless you have an accessory dwelling. You can have 2 if you have an accessory dwelling. And then large lot, that takes us up to the 15,000 square feet. And that's 15,000 square feet minimum. That's not, we're not dealing with averages in this particular case. And then rural residential is the next step. That's 40,000 square feet. That's what your current zoning is. Estate lot residential, I think that was 3 acres and greater. Yep, 3 acres and greater. We don't have any zoning like that out west. And so if you see 3 acres and greater, it's because you've got transferable development rights moving back and forth and retiring rights off of somebody's property. And then estate lot, excuse me, that was estate lot, general open space street. So that's where you're essentially right next to a school property, right next to a park property, right next to natural open space that you don't want to see developed. And one of my words of caution, whenever you see a green open space street on the map, who pays for that street? You don't have development on either side of it. So we just have to use caution as we think about this and really put some effort into forward thinking. I mean, we can go after WACOG dollars, we can go after impact fee funds. There are ways that we can raise money for this, but if you have a street that's colored green, you just have to be cautious about those long stretches. If you look at the street regulating plan, I do have green going right past that blue horizontal lined area. That's the junior high school. The school district owns that property, and so at some point in time, you might see a junior high school there. And we need a plan for streets to go where they're going to go, and we need a plan for it in advance, and then talk to the school district about it as they're putting together their plans. Otherwise, it's just going to be the same old mess that the high school property is. Okay, any questions about the types of streets that you'll see on the street regulating plan? Okay. Next page over, we get into the table of uses on page 6. As you go through the table of uses, eventually I want all of the tables, regardless of what zone you're in, to look somewhat like this. This table of uses, I took every use that you have in your land use code and added a few that I knew were missing and applied it to any one of these streets. So you can imagine, with the exception of some manufacturing types of uses, every single other use that you've got in your code is here. And it's either listed as P for permitted, N for not permitted, or C for you need a conditional use permit to do it. Okay. So on page 6, any questions, comments, or thoughts about accessory uses? Okay. So this is very similar to the way your current code works. If you're building a building that is along one of these colored streets, these are the types of uses that you're allowed to do within that building or on that property. We talk about form-based zones and Euclidean zones. Euclidean zoning is what we currently have without the form-based. Euclidean zoning is, we're going to paint a bunch of colors on a map and we're going to say, if you're in that color, that these are the 5 uses that you're allowed to do, or the 10 uses, or in some cases, the 300 uses you're allowed to do. If you look at Ogden City, did a lot better at holding true to the true Euclidean zoning. If you look at my zone, I'm in the R1 8 zone, and it says you can have houses and household pets and an accessory building. I mean, that's pretty much all you could do. I think there were 5 things that you could do in my zone. That's it. Now in our zones, we've got houses, household pets, barns, accessory buildings, residential or lodges, commercial campgrounds. I mean, we just got a whole bunch of different things that you could do. And it's probably because the A1 zone was intended to be a little more multiple use than you might otherwise see. If you look at what we have in these zones, you get a lot more restrictive as you get more dense, but you also get, depending on how you're looking at it, more permissive. So less animal types of uses in the more dense areas, obviously, but more indoor types of commercial operations can happen. Every use that we saw might cause a problem for its neighbor. So if you've got a building that's got a dental office right next to a residence, and somebody's got to sleep while that drill is going right through the wall on the other side, that's gonna cause some heartache, right? So the intention is, if the use is going to negatively affect a use right next door, then there needs to be some mitigating measures. And so off on the far right hand column, special regulations, you'll see things like, I'm on page 7, under fruit and vegetable storage and packing plant. Well, it's not permitted anywhere until you get into the rural residential, so the 40,000 square feet or greater, estate lot residential, and the open space. But you have to have 10 acres to do that. And that's not too far off from what your current code, your A1, A2, and A3 zones say. Okay, so we tried to stay pretty true to what your current zones are doing as well. Any questions on page 7? Yeah. What you got for me?
Agritourism kind of stuck out to me in that section. And do we really want to, as we create this village zone here, I got a little nervous that we didn't have it into the more large lot area, or the large lot residential zone.
You want to see it allowed in the LLR?
I think it should be
15,000 square feet? Okay.
I don't, so I guess that was a question I had leading into this. We're only talking, so it can happen anywhere. Yeah, I think it needs to be in the yellow.
Okay, hang on. Let's take a step back for just a second. Once we've created this street regulating plan, this does not apply to any property until you've rezoned it, that property to it. So you might, for a little while, just have little pock marks of form-based West Weaver Village in that area until the county commission rips the Band-Aid off and says, nope, this whole area is going to be form-based. Which, I mean, I don't think that's going to be a terrible decision to make on anything that's mixed use commercial. If they were just to say, no, from now on, you're form based. And if you want to do anything different with your property, you got to come into compliance with form based. You're increasing somebody's property value. If you do. So I don't see a lot of issue doing that. But once you get out into some of the other residential areas, it's probably going to be more of an invitation.
So I guess to build on that question, I guess you need to look more into the definition of agritourism, but say, you know, you've got like McFarland's do now, they have that stand out there and pumpkins and all that type of stuff. Is that considered agritourism or is that
So that one would be
Yeah.
a fruit and vegetable stand.
which also isn't allowed?
Where is that?
It's further in there. We'll get to that one in a minute.
Okay. Good. No, that one would not be agritourism.
They don't have a conditional use for agritourism, so I guess that's a good point there.
So I do think, if I recall, I have to get into the code, but I think agritourism requires a certain amount of acreage, which we could do. We could say it's allowed in the LLR and the MLR as long as it's on X amount of acres.
Which goes like we talked the other day, the acreage, and that's where my next ones are gonna come into is like the dairy farm and stuff. Why do we even have that as a permitted use in any of those zones?
Well,
Cause it isn't gonna, I mean.
Yeah.
Estate lot residential is a third acre, or I mean, 3 acres.
Yeah.
The code says you gotta have a minimum 10-acre lot to even consider it, which is far too small either, but.
Yep, I agree.
you know,
Just trying to stay true to what your current code says, which I believe says 10 acres.
But I
Actually,
think
it might
that's
say
why
5
it goes
acres.
back to that clean slate here.
Yeah,
Let's clean it up now.
Okay.
Let's fix our old screw ups of what it used to say.
great.
And
I like it. Okay, so agritourism, do you want to say?
no, I think after discussing it and getting a little bit more out of my one set mind, I feel good about it. I don't know.
well, I'm gonna back up even further. So I'm gonna go back one before then we'll come back to tourism, but this agricultural hobby farm. I mean, to me,
Where are you looking there?
back on
Go back
page
to
6, third one, fourth one. You know, how do you have something like that without it being a mess? On anything less than what's the ELR or what's the open space, the open space or the ELR estate lot, yeah. Sorry.
I agree. I
At
mean,
what point in time do we finally say that some of these areas are going to be residential? We're fooling ourselves going forward with stuff that we're still trying to tie back to ag when you're talking about this kind of density.
I don't
Sorry.
disagree. Do you want, what if we, agricultural hobby farm, what if we define that specific to a certain type of agriculture, crop production?
What,
Agricultural-
growing plants in your front room?
Was it community gardening?
I mean,
Yeah. Okay, let's strike it.
I
So
mean,
strike it from everything except for,
I think it's rural residential on.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's even a little small in some cases, but I think it fits closer there than the rest.
You don't wanna.
Good.
You don't wanna weed out those that can't have a little garden in their backyard.
no,
No, and that's in the next one. That's under the family food production and it's not even permitted until you get into large lot.
so family food production is specific to animals, but if you're gardening, that's an accessory use. So a garden would be just fine. Yeah. As long as you got a house on it. Yep. And that's that may be. What about community garden? Let me check on agricultural hobby farm and just make sure we're not excluding the allowance for a small community garden.
yeah, I don't want to exclude that.
Animals. And maybe we just need to call it community garden instead of hobby farm. Okay, good. Any other questions on 6 before we move on?
7, where was the agritourism?
Oh, hang on.
Okay, no, go ahead.
Let me take a step back. Agricultural hobby farm is an accessory use, so it is accessory to another use that's permitted on the property. It cannot stand alone by itself. This would be intended to be a community garden or a, backyard garden sort of thing.
So can we change the name?
I've got it.
I think then if we're permitting it, it needs to not say hobby farm. It needs to say,
Garden.
Something else.
I mean, I call what my farm is a hobby farm and we're farming a couple hundred acres, so I would take that right down.
Yeah, I remember from our general plan conversations that we all had a slightly different understanding of what hobby and farming was. Okay, back to page 7.
I think down to the bottom, I think corral or stable needs to come out of large lot residential. It shouldn't be permitted.
15,000 square feet minimum. We currently allow animals to be corralled and stabled in our RE 15.
That's just wrong.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
wrong.
Okay.
Half acres are even tough.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay, fair enough. Let's do it.
And I think we should rename the dairy farm one.
What do you want to name it?
It shouldn't, I mean, if that's it, or take it out of every one of those. I mean, I get it for the processing of and sale, but that's,
but having the animal ones.
yeah, there's two different things there. I mean, a dairy farm, it's not a milking, I mean. You want to call it dairy processing or something? Then I could see it.
We have actually, this is a couple of years old, did define the difference between a dairy farm and dairy processing. So farm would be animals on site.
So then, yeah, you're not gonna, then this all needs to go, that whole thing should be not permitted. I think in any of them, especially where it says we have a 10-acre minimum. Lot area required.
It's not really gonna fit into anything. Sizes.
Open space?
So we're gonna give them an open space and they can still have a dairy farm on it?
Potentially.
well, but they may have a goat farm, dairy, farm, which 10 acres,
Yeah, you could do that.
but not Holstein cows.
Yeah.
So we say estate lot residential, we say open space, and we do have lot sizes, but it's not mandatory to go down to that many. Have bigger lots in those
Okay.
areas.
I'm fine with leaving it in ELR and OS,
That's okay.
but I think them other ones are too small.
Got it.
And I don't think we're doing the justice to the people around it if we allow it.
Yeah, you know, the whole key here is. Let's minimize the stupid. Okay, because those fights are gonna come.
Yep, we know they will. Okay.
Hey, Charlie, real quick on that page 7.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at aviary, and to me, if we're allowing them to, I'm assuming like raise chickens, right?
Mhm.
Birds. Why would we not allow them to slaughter their own bird? Property? Is slaughtering meaning like a whole bunch at once? Is that what we mean by that? Or, hey, I want dinner tonight, I'm gonna go and slaughter one of my chickens.
Would choke that chicken.
So, yeah, slaughtering is a little different when it comes, I mean, it's messy. And so, yeah.
Because if I'm raising my own bird, I want it fresh, and there's ethical ways to do that really quick without a gun or whatever else in residential areas.
So slaughtering is listed in
many
some of these
degrees?
other areas here. So
Okay,
once we get down to slaughtering, that's where you'll kind of line them up. So you can raise your chickens and have your eggs in certain zones. In other zones, you can raise chickens, have eggs, and slaughter them, or zones, streets, And so here, we're just talking about the raising of chickens to 8,000 square foot lot sizes. And then I learned the hard way. Chickens are dirty. They invite rodents. Ooh.
Yeah.
So I don't have chickens anymore.
Raccoon.
Well, I think it was a chicken hawk, but yeah, that's not the only reason, but
The little one on cartoons.
yeah, yes. Okay, so you're okay with the aviary the way it is, no slaughtering. We'll look at slaughtering in just a minute.
But
Okay.
Are bees permitted?
Apiary, yes. In fact, bees are permitted even in the small lot residential with a conditional use permit. Now, there's some concern with that. I mean, some people are allergic to bees. And so if your neighbor is on a 3,000 square foot lot, that's right next to where your house is, and maybe right next to where your window is. That's why we changed it to a C instead of a P. Needed a little bit more detail on what that particular property looks like. But we can always also, under special regulations, put lot size requirements.
I agree with Jed. I don't think it should be conditional on a 3,000 square foot, and I don't think it should be allowed on a 8,000 square foot. But if you want to have bees, then you need a 1/3 acre lot to have your bees.
Yeah. And then now, this might be going too far, but then do you say how many hives they can have as well? Because
that makes sense.
I think there should be something to that end, and I don't know apiary enough to know that much about it, but
I'm gonna put an asterisk and I'll do a little bit of research. How many hives?
Somebody that's had a neighbor I don't know. Acre lots and it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially with kids, a lot of kids, right? But back then it was.
My neighbors have kids and they're a really big problem.
Bees.
Let's check them out.
Put their problem in somebody else's backyard.
Yeah.
Think about bees. I do remember this from some of my research. As long as you've got fences of a certain height, bees go up, over, and go. They're not typically up and over and then swarming into the next yard. And so they're vertical and then they're off after that. But I'll take a look at that. Maybe we need a fence height requirement or distance requirement.
I agree with the birds. I think you're gonna have birds, you need to have 3rd acre. Oh, need more
Higher.
acre?
Yeah, it's just clear up maybe around a half acre. Oh, but there's still a mess in there.
I'm
All
thinking
I'm
like a
saying
couple
is-
backyard chickens.
I guess it'd be the same as the height. How many birds they can
Yeah.
actually have.
I think we need to do that as well.
I do too.
Limit number.
How many birds do you have in your yard?
You want the honest answer and you want to know how many beehives I also have?
How many do you have, Liam?
And I have 3 hives and I have like 14 chickens.
And how much area? are you in?
Oh, I'm on 3/4 of an acre.
See, that's okay.
Yeah,
That's
so I got space for it, so I understand, but
But
if
he
it,
also lives in Box Elder County. so-
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm out there.
But still, do you feel like that's, just.
For bees or birds?
Both.
Both. Yeah, I feel like it's reasonable. If I was on a 1/3 acre, I would have problems myself with having 3 hives in the yard. I'm not even worried about other people. Myself, it'd be a lot of bees. Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds we have an expert. I'll go chat with him. Good.
Thank you.
The expert's just gonna tell us it depends.
Well, keep raising the bees because I like flowers and eating food. Okay, anything else on page 7? 8.
My only concern with 8 is, are we cutting our throats a little bit by how much we're regulating like these entertainment facilities, whether it be large or small? The temporary amusement park, I mean, I look at, say that this does come in and we have, something come in the heart of this village and wants to set up a temporary amusement park. Are we limiting it too far?
Maybe. Well, so your temporary amusement park can go all the way into a multi-family residential area. You don't want that to go over into your single family. That's where people are sleeping. I mean, not to say they're not sleeping in the multifamily or the mixed use commercial, but those buildings are built differently. They're built to the International Building Code as opposed to the International Residential Code.
Okay.
Now, the other ones, amphitheater, entertainment facility, large, small. Look at the sizes of those. You could see kind of how we tried to target these. Your mixed use commercial areas, you don't want huge buildings with huge uses. You want a wide variety and diversity of uses in those areas. And that just doesn't work when you got a Walmart sized building going in, unless Walmart has divided itself up into multiple different small businesses. But when you look at large, I mean, there's certainly a place for that. And we want to make sure there's a place for that. If it's outdoor and it's noisy, we want to make sure we're aware of what the noise standards are and how far away they are from residences.
And that's why it's conditional.
Yeah, that's the only reason I would put that as conditional. So it's actually another really good point. When we're looking at form-based village, do we really care what happens inside? I mean, insulate your buildings really well so that your neighbor can sleep. They shouldn't, if your neighbor lives, if your upstairs neighbor is a residence and you're a music club or whatever, insulate your building. And that's all written in here under the supplemental requirements. Your uses are basically what you're doing. We're hands off. As long as we can see that you fall in one of these categories and you're inside of a building, we tried to be as permissive as we possibly can be. I mean, you're gonna get a lot of market rule on this where people just aren't gonna want to live above the stinky Chinese food restaurant. But at the same time, we do say very explicitly in there that noise, smells, vibrations, etc., they have to be dampened and contained to the inside of your where you are. And if you're not doing that, then you're violating the ordinance code. So that way you can have a whole variety of uses right next to each other and not have a really big issue. We're doing the opposite of what in the Industrial Revolution taught us to do. The Industrial Revolution said, get the houses away from the factories. They're stinky, they pollute, they make a lot of noise, yada, yada, yada. We just don't live that way. And that type of planning has led to a highly segregated community. I don't mean segregated racially, I mean segregated in terms of uses, where we've got to drive 1 million miles a year in order to actually get to where we want to go. This idea is going back to our roots before the machine kind of separated us a little bit, because now machines are helping us. Okay, sorry, that was
Hey, Charlie,
soapbox.
so before you go on.
Yep.
I'm looking at amphitheater and I'm thinking in the ELR, it says no. I wonder if we should consider conditional there. I think of like Barker Park in North Ogden.
Mhm,
I mean, that's a very high-end neighborhood, right? And
Yeah.
they have an amphitheater there, but the way that it's designed works with that neighborhood. So,
Yep.
I mean, I don't know if we have any of those areas that
Yep.
would matter, but
Keep in mind, this is the baseline. If
Okay.
a developer comes in and says, I want to put an amphitheater in this community and it works, we're going to find a way to make that work, whether it's making a tweak to this or giving them a special development agreement to do that. So
okay.
think a little bit
So
about-
it's not like a, okay.
yeah, it's nothing is ever locked down. You can always make new rules, but ADC Ranch, their original open space and park proposal had an amphitheater right in the middle of that community. And we would have considered that maybe even just a subdivision as opposed to an actual for-profit commercial amphitheater. That would have been a park
Yeah.
amphitheater as opposed to a
Okay.
USANA amphitheater.
Okay.
Great. And that's how like Barker's, I'd view that was similar to that.
Yeah.
Where it would fall more under the government institution area than,
You got it. Yep, you got it.
because it's a public.
That's right. And that's another one of the ways that we try to play really nice. It's a lot of regulation, but they all try and overlap a little bit so that we can find ways to make it work while at the same time not letting the bad players be in the, well, the players be in the wrong direction, bad or good. Okay. Anything else on 8? 9?
I think stable for horses, non-commercial needs to come out of the large lot residential. Just to fall in suit with our stable and corral as in the other one.
Okay.
But now going down the road of what you just said, that opens my eyes a little bit more of. This is just, if someone wants to bring in and propose a private horse or equestrian center. And they're in the estate lot residential zone.
Mhm.
Or even the rural residential zone. I don't know why we shouldn't allow it, but it's not saying we're not gonna look at it.
Right. We can always make a special rule with that. So what I heard you say is take it out of the LLR, but maybe leave it in the RR. Do you want to take it out?
No,
of the
I'm
RR?
talking two different areas. I'm talking. So stable for horses, non-commercial needs to come out of LLR. Right now it's permitted.
Okay.
But then you jump up 2 lines, horse or equestrian event center.
Yep.
That's where I think it should be either at least conditional in them other 2 zones, but
Mm.
I'm not against leaving it how it says right now and then look at it on a case by case basis, because we're not going to see very many unless Pat decides to change his mind again and bring us an equestrian center. But
You got it. And the intention, obviously, of the RR and ELR is it's still operatively, the operative word is residential, right? So you definitely don't want to go in where you don't want it. So yeah, better to not permit it and then do a special development agreement or something. Okay.
if you'd have told me that last week, then I wouldn't have so many
So
X's on your paper.
I want to take that comment because I kind of thought that comment would be coming, and I want to take it up to the Ogden Valley as well and say there is a reason why I don't usually give you guys information in advance of the meeting. Sometimes Ogden Valley does a little bit more. They say, well, had you given me this stuff, I could research and read and review. I'd have you a lot more comments. And sometimes I want to walk you through it so we could actually talk about it before you pre-formulate an opinion.
Hey, you said it was getting us out of Christmas parties and stuff, so I did it.
That's why we're all here.
Okay, page, what am I on, 9? Did I already say that? Okay, page 10.
Well, let's talk on, oh wait, your page numbers are different, mine, sorry.
Oh, are they?
Okay, 11.
Ten's perfect.
Well, see, but this was in this old one.
I'll keep 10 the same.
I can follow.
Number 9 was this one, and we were talking about butchers, and so I wanted to get back into your killing of
Oh,
birds.
right, yeah.
All right, butchers, page 11.
11,
For us, yeah.
got it. My only concern there is, you know, if we have these, I look at 900 and I look at these, what could potentially be there, and I look at kind of how Sunnyfield's meats turned out in the valley.
Mhm.
Why do we not permit that in like the MUC zone,
So
MFR zone?
the small butcher would be limited to 5,000 square feet floor area.
Which is what we've had there before, right?
So that would be similar to Sunnyfield. I mean, because are you talking selling space or are you talking actual processing in the back?
They might be a little bigger, but also Sunnyfield, their front is mixed use commercial, but everything behind is open space or farm. And so if you want, we can maybe even open that up in your open space zone.
So you want to put buildings in our open space zone?
Sorry, yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. So open space doesn't mean devoid of buildings, it just means a whole lot of buildings not there. There is a lot coverage regulation. I think your open space zone says no more than 2.5% of your open space lots can be covered.
Why that number was on there.
Yeah, so you could still put agricultural buildings on there. You could still have a golf course with a pro shop in your open space zone.
Okay, I'm good.
So you don't want to open it up in the open space?
Oh, yeah, I think it needs to be in the open space.
Okay, I'm gonna, so this is a large butcher or other custom meat production. Right,
They're wanting in an open space, so you're saying, a
Yeah.
large one?
If that's the way it,
this is unlimited floor area versus small is limited to 5,000 square feet.
we're limited because they can only have what'd you say, 2.5% of their
That's right.
open
That's right.
space.
True.
So it does limit them.
Unlimited so long as they buy unlimited property.
If they want to go buy 100 acres and they're gonna build a building that sits on 2.5 acres of that to make it that much floor space, I mean,
Then why would they want zone?
I don't disagree.
And let's also, looking at special regulations,
But 5,000
slaughtering and custom cutting are two different things. You're not killing on site, so you're just cutting the meat. Right? So that's another limitation.
So, but we're talking here of butcher custom meat cutting though, right? Not slaughtering.
That's right. I just wanted to make sure it's clear. We're not talking about slaughtering.
Yeah.
Those animals are already dead when they show up.
Yes.
Okay.
But I look at a floor area and I look at some of these smaller butcher shops and 5,000 square feet ain't much.
You can go larger.
So that's why I mean, if they're gonna cut, if you look at that and then their floor area to sell with their counter and stuff like that, I mean,
Gotcha.
that's small.
Cured. Okay. So 10,000.
Which would be, is that considered large?
No, large is anything over small. Small is actually the limiter.
Yeah, then I think we need the floor area needs to be bigger to at least 10.
Okay, 10 it is.
So where are you permitting that though? In the MUC?
It's
It
so
stays in the same zones, I think, but it just needs that
you got it.
bigger area.
Oh, in the G, oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
No. It's all in the first 4. One down.
Yep. So
Where it's got
Sorry,
that
I was-
5,000 square foot. So this one's unlimited space. But this one only has the 5,000.
Right.
I think we need, I mean, 5,000 is not very much room. When you start getting saws and freezers and.
Yeah.
You know, all that stuff. So
Okay.
I'm good with 10 if you guys are.
We can try it. I think that might be one. Little butcher shop. Gonna get 10 pretty easy with space. Bigger, maybe not. So I think that 10's a good start.
somebody comes in and says, I've got 12. We can make a tweak at that time.
Mhm.
We should do.
Okay. Anything else on 11? No one wants to regulate alcohol?
No. We need it, you guys.
Hang on, let me grab. it. Okay, so. Page 12. Great. 13.
Hold on.
So would you consider if the Parks District brought in a building? It would be under the government institutional area, it wouldn't.
If it's owned by a public agency, yep, it's government institutional.
Okay, under agency, I'm a little concerned with what, so. Like the. MFR zone,
Mhm.
that's where we want on the bottom. Commercial,
So the MUC, mixed use commercial, that's on the bottom you want and
Homes
are
on the top.
essentially requiring commercial.
okay,
Now, when we say requiring, we need to have rooftops in order for that commercial to exist. And so in the beginning, we may say you could use your MUC base for residential as well. But in time, the market will say, no, let's convert that from residential to commercial. Once you get to the MFR, multifamily residential, you can do commercial on the ground level. You don't have to. You don't have to reserve that space. So if I wanted to, you'll see this in the lot development standards. Your MUC, your VOC, and your GNI says your first story, your street level, your minimum height of that story is 15 feet. You cannot build a ceiling lower. Well, you can have a false ceiling, but your floor, the bottom of the floor above you has to be 15 feet high. Gives you a lot of opportunity for vertical space where you can have mechanical overhead and all that. You could put some residential space in there, but in time that'll become commercial. Whereas if you build a multifamily residential building, you can go right in and say, all right, my first floor is 8 feet. And if it is your first floor intended to be multifamily residential, it either has to be 5 feet below or 5 feet above grade. And so that way, when Bren's in his apartment eating cereal and I'm walking past, we're not making eye contact. It's a little separation. You get your stoop with your stairs that go up to it and all that. And so there's method to the madness.
pretty picture.
You're taking all the entertainment away. Fun to watch people.
Well, in the beginning on your mixed use commercial, you're probably going to have some of that awkward moment.
So do we want to permit then stuff like? Travel office or a property management office on that first floor in the multifamily residential? Right now, it just says no.
Commercial. So hang on a second.
In the office uses one.
In your commercial areas, your focus is on getting cash registers there, not office space there. And so your offices should be either behind the cash register shop or above the cash register shop. So the intention of this is to say very limited office on that street facing side of the building.
That's why we would want it more in the medium multifamily residential, not in the multi-use commercial.
Sorry, the multifamily residential, if you're going to do anything on that first floor, it's got to be cash registers. Otherwise, your office space really isn't allowed there. It's either residential or cash registers on your first floor.
I got it.
Okay, sorry, I don't mean to confuse it.
I've got a question on that. Over in Europe, you don't go in, but all over the commercial areas, walk-up tellers. How would that fit?
You could actually, so this is something I wanted to carve into it, where if you were to have a non-retail oriented use, and I didn't carve it in, you could have up to X amount of width to do so. So you could have a walk-up teller booth. Also, you've got a hotel, that's not retail. I mean, you might have some retail right there as you walk in, but walk in through this entryway past the Starbucks, and then there's the concierge, right? So you'd still need to have a little bit of space on the street for people to roll into. So point well taken. This doesn't currently contemplate it. I'll write it down. I'll see if I can get in there.
I bring that up. Behind the moment.
Yeah, huh? Okay. Um, 14. Go back 2 pages,
No,
pretty please. I just wanted to point out page 12, very bottom of the first table, produce stand commercial. So a commercial produce stand intended for the sale of agricultural products. Permitted in all of those first 4 zones. So what the McFarlands are doing on the corner, if that was in the form base, would be allowed right there. Got it. And you want to have street vendors. It's actually really entertaining. In fact, they don't even necessarily need to be on private property. As long as their stand is a certain dimension, they could be right in the public right of way on the sidewalk. Okay, what did I say? With 15?
14.
Oh, 14 dwellings.
I like your thinking, but 14.
While we're considering that, Chair, can I ask a question here? So I know we kind of said that we were gonna hold off on the other agenda items because they may be affected by this. But I'm noticing that the area that was gonna be affected, that developer is no longer with us. Do you feel that we should, does this affect those that are on the agenda? I just hate making them wait here for us to go through this if it doesn't affect their area. If our decision is not gonna be affected by this. If you feel like it's still gonna be affected, then I feel like we should go on, obviously, but I'm just wondering if we're making them sit here through this when it's not.
we've already discussed it.
I think, yeah, I think we've taken care of everything down to, down to this.
We haven't done street regulating yet.
Right.
That's
But
the other
that's part of
question.
this. Okay.
That's not part of this. Sorry, street regulating, excuse me. We haven't done
Substandard road.
substandard road yet. We could jump to that. We may have people waiting for that conversation.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that too.
I don't know. You know, if I was waiting, I wouldn't want to sit through this exciting part. I mean, but
It's all how it happens. It's the
I know,
process.
I get it, but
You're gonna get papers all day.
sorry, you're on page 15. Just remember that.
Because I got
Which is
15
probably
here, I
page
got
14 for
13
you.
over here.
But we'll get you back on there. 14.
I'm not a good multitask.
Sorry to change the way it's going. I just feel bad for them. And then they'll probably stay anyways. Okay.
Pat don't have a choice. He's got to stay.
Pat
I
said
got a
that he would
question
give us
for him
each a
after the
Ferrari
meeting.
if we let him get out early, so.
And I don't know if I can ask it in public. I see some dirt being moved. Is that where the golf? Yeah, that's what's going. I like it. He's finally moving dirt on a development. But it used to be ours and then he took it away from us and gave it to Mayor Sladeville.
Maybe if you didn't insult him every time. He's close.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot of stuff in here and not all of it's done. But let's get straight to the question of streets. Okay, so crank it on back to okay, let's go to page 12. This is a section that's in the subdivision code. And this is something that we had talked about for quite some time in the past, and it's back again. I'm hoping to kind of get it rolled into some of this stuff because I think it's going to be important. Shared private lane. And there's some limitations on when a shared private lane can happen, just like limitations on when a private street can occur. But this basically says a shared private lane pursuant to section 106.2.1 shall be labeled and as a shared private lane. So this is basically, how does that get memorialized on the subdivision plat? So that's a note goes on there, and then turn the page over to 14, shared private lane. So this says that when a shared private lane is allowed, see, it says a shared private lane is allowed as long as it is not in lieu of a required street. So if you are in between some of these streets and you were otherwise going to do a cul-de-sac, there's really no reason for the county to own that cul-de-sac. It'd be really nice for us not to have to own that cul-de-sac. In fact, there's no public interest in that. Just the lots who own on it. Now, it doesn't mean that the county won't own it if you don't ask for it, but if you want to do some private access, you can. And this doesn't take out of your property area. So your shared private lane can be counted towards your lot area as well. So basically we're saying when it can be allowed and the limits of when it can be allowed. Just basically says, don't do this in lieu of a street. But if you are going to do this and it's in an area that we might want a street one day, we're going to allow you to do it still, but under certain conditions. And so we do define in here what those conditions are. We're basically saying you need to give us an easement that says that we get the property free and clear at the time that we think a road needs to be there. And when I say we, it's county commissioners who will make that call, but allow someone to put a shared private lane in lieu of a street for a small period of time. I do not see this affecting Western Weaver very much. Maybe in some master plan developments. I think this is going to be more an Ogden Valley thing. Okay. Okay, next page, 16. Line 607. It says development on a substandard street shall comply with the provisions of section 108.7.19. Made that section nice and short. All right, let's go to 108.7.19, which actually I think I renumbered. Just putting a bookmark in 108.7.19. As you flip the page, so page 17, starting on line 696, now we're in title 108 standards. If you recall the way our ordinance is written, you've got title 102 is administration, title 104 is zones, title 106 is subdivisions, title 108 is standards. So standards is basically, this is all the stuff we didn't say in those other chapters. And this is what you got to comply with as you develop. Okay. I am trying to heal 40 years of ordinance revision, which has made this a really useless section of code. Maybe I shouldn't say useless, just hard to navigate section of code. So just taking like uses like we've done in the past and consolidating them together. So the opening paragraph of that would be 108.7.2 supplemental site development standards. Okay. So this is where all your height requirements are, your setback requirements, everything that the zone's going to say your residence can be 35 feet tall, your accessory building could be 25 feet tall. It's got to be set back this much. But then there's all the special uses like how far should animals and fowls be set back? How far should buildings be from a collector or arterial street? This one's going to be important. You're looking at line 708 on page 18. Where our general plan says we've got a whole bunch of streets out there that we are saying at full build out, we need 100 feet wide, or in some cases 150 or even 270 feet wide if we're building a freeway out there. Your setback for your building needs to comply with whatever that future right-of-way design is. So if you're on 1800 South, and 1800 right now maybe is only 66 feet wide, but we're planning for 1800, at least where Stagecoach is, to be at least 80 feet wide, if not 100. I think we only said 80. In that case, if you were to pull a building permit on an existing lot, not inside of a subdivision that hasn't already conveyed over that portion to the street, your building has to be set back from where that future right-of-way line is, not from where the existing line is. So this is already something that's in your code. It's just tucked away in a nice little corner that I don't think most people know exists. And so I'm just trying to bring it forward a little more. Okay. Height measurements. projections, accessory buildings, yada, yada, yada. Deletion of a bunch of stuff. Okay. Section 108.7.7, starting on line 961. On page 26. So the header of that is going to be changed to supplemental street access and right-of-way standards. Okay. Very first subparagraph in there is obstructions in the right-of-way. Next subparagraph is vegetation and snow removal for pedestrian rights of way. We talked a little bit about that earlier today. 3 is clear view of intersecting streets. A lot of the stuff is already there, just reorganizing. And then moving down to, I haven't moved it yet. It's going to be 4. And it's on page 31. Starting with 185. Okay. Now, most of this has not changed from what your current subdivision code says, but difference is it's no longer in your subdivision code, so it's no longer just a subdivision requirement. It's both a subdivision requirement and a requirement for a lot that's developing outside. So let's say it's a previously existing subdivided lot. There are requirements that they still have to comply with if you haven't already built a home on it. Okay. Okay. I'm just going to start reading. You guys tell me when you want me to stop. Development on a substandard street is not permitted unless in compliance with this section. New or improved agricultural accesses are exempt from these requirements. You guys okay with that? Now I have a note off to the side that says maybe we need to think about other kinds of uses that are also exempt. But right now I'm only exempting agricultural uses. Okay, part B. For the purposes of this section, a substandard street means any of the following: from the point it becomes substandard, or from the nearest intersection with a non-terminal street or street route, whichever is closer to the furthest extent of the applicant's proposed development adjacent to the street. I don't like that paragraph. I'm going to rewrite it. But basically, any of these following things, the 3 that I'm going to list off, from the point it becomes substandard all the way to where the development is occurring. Okay. Number 1, a substandard street, obviously. Number 2, a road that is public by right of use that does not meet minimum public street standards. And number 3, a terminal street route or public by right of use road route that at any point leading to the development does not meet minimum public street standards. So 3600 West be a good example. I don't know that there was ever a question on whether or not that was public, but we do have a road similar to 3600 up in the valley where the landowners are continuing to fight us on the idea that it might be public. It's actually really, really easy for a private driveway to turn public. All you got to do is open a business where public can access, and all of a sudden 10 years later that is a public right of way. And the courts have ruled that you no longer need to have that adjudicated. Now, if you're going to argue over whether or not it's public or not, you're going to have it adjudicated, but the county can immediately start acting as if that's a public right of way at that 10-year mark. So if you've got a private driveway and you've got and someone's got to drive down it to get to your business, and it's a business that's open to the public, that's as easy as it gets to call that a public right of way. Okay. And that's state statute. That's not even county statute. Okay. Part C. An application for a permit, subdivision, or any other approval authorized by this land use code that proposes to provide, add, or increase the intensity of access to a lot or lots from a substandard street shall not be approved unless the substandard nature of the street or street route is cured. However, if curing the substandard nature of the street or street route is not roughly proportionate to the increased impact of the proposal, then the following provisions shall apply. I'm going to take a second to give you a little anecdote. I think most of the substandard rules you guys saw in some shape or form, but we didn't get final action on it until we got to the county commission, and it changed. I think it changed quite a bit between you guys and the county commission. And the Ogden Valley also had a little bite at it. And so I can't remember exactly what you guys originally saw, but this is what it turned out to be. Okay. So the following provisions shall apply. Number 1, right-of-way dedication or conveyance. In all cases, the applicant shall dedicate by subdivision plat or deed conveyance to the county the minimum street right-of-way width of the applicant's entire street frontage. Now, there was a public by right of use road in the Ogden Valley, and a gentleman tore his home down and built a new home. Now, we already had a similar kind of provision, and the county said, well, this tells us that you've got to dedicate your street frontage to the county. Now, he filed for an opinion by the state ombudsman's office, and the state ombudsman's office said, there's no rough proportionality here. There was a house on the property before, there's a house on the property after. There is no increase to the access to the lot. Therefore, county, you cannot make him give anything, gift anything to you. You could buy it from him, but you can't make him gift. Now, if he built a house and then an accessory house, he's increasing the intensity of access to the property at that point. And so at that point, we could ask for it. So even though we're saying in all cases, you shall do this, there are still limitations. If they're not actually increasing the impact, we can't make them do it. Okay. Okay, part 2, street frontage improvements. In all cases, the applicant shall be financially responsible for the improvement of the applicant's street frontage for up to, but not to exceed 3 times the applicable minimum lot width allowed. Except, however, if the development is of the nature that makes except, however, if the development is of the nature that makes the future development of any remaining portion of the lot width unlikely, the applicant shall bear the burden of the full lot width. So what that basically means is, let's say somebody's got, we're in a zone that requires a minimum 100 feet of frontage, and there's 300 feet of frontage there. We could say, you only have to pay for your 100 feet of, well, actually 3 is terrible because I'm saying 3 times. Hang on, let's do the math differently. Let's say you get 900 feet of frontage in a zone that requires 100 feet of frontage. At a minimum, we would say, all right, you need to improve 300 feet of frontage for your 9-acre home. But the rest of it, we expect that your 9-acre lot is going to be re-subdivided at some point in the future. So we're not going to make you do the full improvements. This is really applicable to the larger lots that are not developing to the maximum potential of the zone. But the caveat there is, if you're developing your lot in a way that makes it very unlikely it'll ever be redivided into multiple successive lots of 100 feet of frontage, then we can make you do the whole thing. Okay. The goal here is that every street front is improved as development occurs, but it's not to ping every 10-acre and 20-acre lot owner when they have ton of potential for the future to further divide it. They don't have to do it until they're actually putting the impact in, right? Does that make sense? Okay. The county engineer has full authority and discretion to determine the specific improvements required to be installed by the applicant prior to or as condition of approval, and whether any remaining improvements may be deferred to a later time as otherwise provided in this section. So far, we've only been talking about the frontage that is actually owned by the applicant.
Charlie?
Yes.
Flip the page. I want to go back to A. Agricultural access. Is there a code that provides protection? Or is this just the way that it's been written previously and we're going to write that?
I wrote it. Hasn't been written that way previously.
The reason I'm a little concerned there is we have this clash. Agriculture and development. And they don't go together real well. We've all learned that. And I'm a little nervous with that, giving that bit of an exemption there. Because giving traffic what it is, giving the road sizes what they currently are, we could create some problems. And I'm specifically thinking about that development out west there on what's it called? Black Pine. Black Pine. Thank you. And the neighbors around, around that, where there's going to be an extra load there. The road initially is, 900 or 1100 south, not going to be improved much more than it is, at least initially, down to that point. And so, right now you still have a fair amount of agriculture along heavily used street.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the right terminology would be, but I'd like to see something more along the lines of reasonable than a full exemption because of that.
I think it's fair enough. Let me give you a little bit more a little bit of background behind my thought here. The intention here is if the intensity of access by agriculture is increasing, that would be exempt. Now, I suppose the county can come in and say, "Ooh, we have tracked, well, we should say, previously you had 10 tractor trips a day coming in and out of this access, and now you got 1,000 tractor trips a day." Yeah, that would be a pretty big impact. And so there's where your reasonable threshold comes in. And I think that's a fair deal. If we don't say something about this, if we just ignore agriculture altogether, someone who comes in to get a land use permit for a barn all of a sudden becomes responsible for all 20-acre frontage. And so I'm okay with putting in there reasonable.
No, I don't have a problem with it being addressed. I think it needs to. But I think there needs to be some different terminology. And the reason I'm saying that is because somebody might decide that it's easier for them, even with their 1 or 2 trips out a day, to be closer to an intersection or be closer to a spot on that road where it shouldn't be, where it's not a real reasonable place for it to be.
Yeah. Okay, let me see if I can get some language in there that addresses that. Good. Next page, 32. Okay, so now we're on to paying proportionate share number 3. So now we're beyond the applicant's street frontage, right? As part of a quote project improvement, and I used that word earlier today, as defined in UCA 1136-102, that is the Impact Fee Act. The applicant shall pay the cost of a proportionate share of street design, street improvements, and if applicable, street right-of-way acquisition to bring the street into or closer to compliance with county standards. The cost of the proportionate share shall be determined as follows. Now I want to pause for a second. Proportionate share, from what I've seen in any other code that I've read, has not been defined. The courts get to decide what that is. And that's after Liam makes a really compelling argument of what we think proportionate share is. And then the opposing side shares their really compelling argument. The judge gets to decide what proportionate share is. By writing it down here, we're locking ourselves into what proportionate share is. That doesn't mean that we can't change this code at some point in the future, but so far I don't see a lot of risk, but I'm still mulling it over in my head. This is written in our code as it stands now, so we're not at huge risk to continue forward with this. I just want to make sure that was clear to you guys. Okay. Proportionate share shall be determined as follows. Engineer cost estimate. So you need to estimate the cost to improve the substandard street or street route to county standards from the point it becomes substandard. Or, and this is key because I just added this in so we can get some clarity on these 2 applications that we're looking at, or from the nearest intersection with a non-terminal or terminal street or street route, whichever is closer, to the furthest extent of the applicant's proposed development adjacent to the street. So in the case of Anselmi, we would say go to 4,300. That's your closest intersection. Now, 1,400 beyond 4,300 is still substandard. But that's for people on another block to take care of, right? We've got to be able to set that threshold and not have to make it so not just overly nebulous in terms of what we're going to say makes it substandard. For example, we can't go 10 blocks down the road and say, well, that's still part of the problem, because each of these blocks will be improved.
So are you saying that because at that point you have an intersection, so you got 2 different directions out of there?
That is exactly right. And that's why I said non-terminal. I mean, if it's terminal, you go all the way back to when it stops being terminal, because those are dangerous streets. Or you go a different direction and make it non-terminal. Okay. We all on board with the idea they just go to the next intersection over. So Anselmi would be back to 4,300. Singletree would be to 4,300. the other direction, right? Just two different streets, 2200 versus 1400. Yep. Okay. And you're including the furthest extent of the applicant's development along that street. Okay, so all of their street frontage. Okay, this shall be furnished by the applicant in the form of an engineer's cost estimate. The estimate shall use up-to-date market costs for engineering and design, surveying, construction material, labor, and any other expense necessary to improve the street to county standards. The added expense of an intersection or other street component that is not related to providing a standard street to the applicant subdivision shall be excluded. So if we know that we've got block intervals every 800 feet or whatever, and they're going 1400 feet, we're not making them do the full intersection. We're just a normal road. Someone else have to do that intersection when it's their turn to develop. Okay. County engineer may require the applicant to furnish engineered drawings of the street and an itemized cost estimate in order to substantiate the estimated cost. The county engineer has the discretion to adjust the cost estimate for inflation or market fluctuations during the duration of construction of the applicant's obligations. And a subdivision improvement that is required of the applicant by the land use code, regardless of the condition of the street, shall not be included in this calculation and shall be provided as otherwise required by this title. In other words, if they were otherwise going to be required by the ordinance to do it, we're not piecemealing that out. They're doing that. Okay. Okay, now let's determine the street's potential build out, because in order to do a cost estimate and apply a price tag to this, you need to know how many buildings are going to be allowed along that street. Okay, so you're going to find the sum of the estimated number of lots expected along the street at build out, plus the applicant's proposed number of lots as follows. So Stagecoach Estates has 120 lots, at least according to what we're looking at in front of us. All 120 need to be included in this calculation because that's how much traffic is coming through those streets to this property, right? Okay, number one, measure the length of the substandard street or street route from the point it becomes substandard to the, I'm going to asterisk that, when it becomes substandard or nearest intersection. To the furthest extent of the applicant's subdivision along the substandard street or street route. Okay, 2, determine the estimated number of lots expected along the street at build out by dividing the length of the street, the results of subsection B1, which is we just read, by the standard minimum lot width of the zone as found in Title 104 of this land use code. Do not use alternative lot widths, such as those allowed in a cluster subdivision or lot average subdivision, even if the applicant's subdivision has them. Number 3, combine the estimated number of lots expected along the street at build out, the result of subsection B1, B2, with the applicant's proposed number of subdivision lots. So let's just say from Stagecoach Estates, from their intersection all the way back to wherever the next intersection is, we divide that by, let's just say it's 100 feet for all of the RE15 that's going to be going in the area. That's that number. And then we add in the 120. So let's just say maybe there's 18 lots that can be developed all the way back to the next intersection, plus 120. Okay, and that's the new number we're working with here. And part C, final proportionate share calculation. You divide the cost to improve that street or street route to the county standards, the results of B1 A, by the sum of the estimated number of lots expected along the street at build out plus the applicant's proposed number of lots. And so Pat would take 120. Well, let's say outside of a subdivision, there's another 20 lots that could be built back to the next intersection. So it would be 140. And the cost to build from that intersection all the way up to Pat's property is $1 million. $1 million divided by 140, and then divided in half again because it's only one side of the road. And that's how much per lot is Pat's obligation to improve that street. Or sorry, that's how much per lot you should expect out of anyone along that street buying into these street improvements. And now, you know, he's only got 120, he doesn't have 140, multiply 120 by whatever that number is. And now you know what his cost is. This is not going to be the most perfect number. At some point in time, he might just rebuild the entire road because it's cheaper for him. That's okay. we're trying to figure out what rough proportionality is. And I don't think a court is going to tell us that we're not being roughly proportionate here. This is pretty well rough proportionality. The alternative to this is don't let anyone develop unless the entire road is built to standard, which then you're relying on dozens of developers and landowners to get together, pool their resources and rebuild the entire road. So now what you can expect, because you need an engineered cost estimate, someone needs to go out, survey the road, design the road improvements. There's a cost associated with that. And if I'm doing a 5-lot subdivision on a substandard road, I mean, that's just surveying the road and designing the improvements might be outside of my rough proportionality. And that's okay, because what the county should do at that point is the county should pitch in, use impact fee dollars to pay or help pay for that survey design. So let's say we get that survey design done. It turns out that I'm obligated to $30,000 a lot. Well, if I'm doing 5 lots, there you go. 5 times 3, $150,000. I'm writing the county a check. It costs $300,000 to design the road, but impact fees or the cost of that another developer is going to be paying into it, into that account will help make the county whole. Does that make sense? Okay.
We'll never get the streets improved.
Okay, required improvements, escrow and allowed deferral. Okay, county engineer shall, A, required improvements, require the applicant to make improvements to the substandard street or street route in amount up to but not to exceed the applicant's cost of the proportionate share as determined above. County engineer has full authority and discretion to determine the specific improvements required of the applicant up to that full amount, right? So the county engineer can say, "Oof, you know, this roadway is in poor shape. Our drainage system is in poor shape. We don't even know where that water is going to go. We don't want you to do the full cross section or your half of the cross section. We only, in fact, we want you to do your half of the cross section would have cost $100,000. We want you to put $100,000 worth of asphalt, and we want you to go twice as far as your street frontage. And so you're putting the same amount of money into the project, but until we know exactly where that water is going to drain, we don't want you to put your curbing number or whatever." Okay, escrow, so the county engineer shall require the cost to be deposited with the county for the county to add a streets needed improvements into scheduled road maintenance and improvements or a deferral. Before I read deferral, I just want to make sure it's clear on what we meant by B. So this is an A, B, or C. The county engineer shall do A, B, or C. And if the county says, all right, the amount of money you're throwing into this, you know, this is $1 million road and you're only putting $100,000 into it. We can't do anything with your $100,000 right now. And so we're just going to put it into an escrow account. And 10 years from now, we'll have a little more money in that account. We'll be able to do something with it. 10 years from now, your $100,000 isn't going to pay as much. It's just the cost of doing business. We're going to lose a little bit on that, and the taxpayers are going to have to supplement. But good news is within that period of time, that 10-year period of time, there's a bunch of new houses out there paying taxes. So maybe there's some offset and a bunch of new houses out there paying into the impact fee fund. Okay, deferral. If the county engineer determines that the funds that would be made available are insufficient to provide meaningful project improvements along the substandard street or street route, a substandard road agreement may be allowed in lieu of the project improvements required herein. In this case, the applicant and all owners having interest in the subject lot or lots shall execute a substandard road agreement and notice to new owners. The content of the substandard road agreement and notice shall be as specified by the county, but at a minimum, it shall. Number 1, for a terminal substandard street or street route, explain that the subject lot or lots has or have only a single street access connecting it to the greater interconnected public street network, and the single street access is not built to the adopted minimum design and safety standards. So we're putting people on notice up front. Don't complain that your road's not wide enough. You're the one who chose to move there. Okay, 2, require a deferral agreement that specifies that the owners or successors and heirs are responsible at a time the governing authority deems it necessary to pay for their proportionate share of curing the substandard nature of the street or street route. So that means that the developer gets out of jail free, and the guy who moves in later is going to have to pay for the developer's avoidance of paying for those improvements. I don't mean avoidance like they tried to avoid it. I mean avoidance as in county engineer said, well, I can't do anything with this money because it's not enough. Okay, and then 3, allow the governing authority at its option to withhold any written protests filed by the owners or their successors or heirs under the state code's Assessment Area Act, provisions for local districts, or any similar government revenue generation mechanism for the final tally of collected protests, provided, however, that the revenue generated by the mechanism is used to improve access to the lot or lots, and 4, be recorded to the property at the time of the subdivision recordation or sooner for subdivision approval or prior to the issuance of the land use permit or final approval or other types of approvals. I don't like how that's worded, but that's essentially how that works. Any questions?
Yeah, but the money, the escrow money is still in there.
If it's a deferral,
If it's a deferral, yeah.
that means that the engineer has decided there's not enough that they could throw into this that's roughly proportionate. It's not even worth collecting at this time. And so what we do instead is we say, we're going to wait. The other reason that the engineer may decide to defer is because they don't want to throw money into an escrow account because we think we're 20, 30, 40 years down the road and $100,000 held on for 40 years is just not going to earn enough interest to actually keep pace with inflation. So you wait. Now, here's the thing. This requires savvy owners to know that there's a deferral recorded to their property and now they're on the hook. And if they're on the hook to pay for what the developer would otherwise have had to pay for, they hopefully are savvy enough to realize they better not be paying the same price tag that the neighbor whose developer did put the improvements in is paying.
Anybody. I feel like we ended up with the situation we had with, I believe, states
Mhm.
where buy it, sell, somebody else buy it.
Yep.
Time.
Yeah. So the only reason why the engineer should ever allow this to happen is if there's not enough money that can be collected to do anything with. In most cases, the developer is going to say, well, let's do the math. It's the cost this much money. That's $20,000. Great. That might help with a little overlay for Joe's guys to go out there and maybe add 4 or 5 inches to the edge of that road when he does the overlay. So I think in most cases, the developer will pay. I can think of 1 lot subdivisions or 2 lot subdivisions, in which case it might not make any sense to ask for anything in those cases. If that makes sense. I agree with you.
It's the cost of doing business. You're right.
Yep.
Buying into that.
Yep.
The likelihood of them knowing.
Right. Right. Especially 20 years goes by, you read this little notice that says, wow, well, they're not going to do anything if they haven't done anything yet. Like, yep. I agree. In fact, a few years back, you might have remembered a news story about a little old lady in Farmington whose deferral agreement was called due. She's on fixed income. Now, everybody on the street was called due, but her specifically was egregious to her just because of her situation. And, you know, that doesn't make for good news headlines. Oftentimes when that kind of stuff happens, that's when the politics step in and fix the problem. But I agree. I'd love to see this not in there at all. Tried to not allow it to be in there when we did this the first time around, and it just we got stuck in a churn cycle. And the commissioner said, you know what, we're going to do it for those few exceptions to the rule.
I have another, mention your examples that it may be that the money's not needed for like saying but for me, if it's not necessary at that time, why still require them to pay that fee? But we still want you to pay in case it is necessary later on. Like, that doesn't make sense.
So if we don't get the developer to put money into it at the time that they're developing, so we could say it's not necessary today because the amount of traffic that you're creating here is for this small segment pretty insignificant. But if everybody created the same amount of traffic, you know, 10, actually it's more than 10. The national is 10 vehicle trips a day. Wasatch Front estimates that to be 11.2 here in our area, so even higher. So these three homes are creating 33.6 vehicle trips a day, right? Not a super big deal because it's three homes. And then all of a sudden we get 6. It's a lot more sense. Now that we've got a gap right here. It didn't make sense for these three homes to do it, even though we have a direct rough proportionality. We can prove that there is a proportionality for these homes to have done it. But we don't realize it until we've got those 60 in there. And now get 60 with improvements, and then we get these guys without improvements, and all of a sudden we're like, "God, I wish we had at least half the money that we could have gotten out of them to go back. So it's the same kind of thing. Like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for the whole right of way to be widened for that subdivision. So then it sucks right back down into a really narrow roadway. But in time, it'll all make sense. It just takes time. It's those magical sidewalks that go to nowhere. 50 years from now, they will go somewhere. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Placed, but yeah.
A lot of that's basically what our code says.
Yeah, just a couple of small tweaks in there just to make it generally applicable and to add the expectation that we're not expecting all of 1400 to be improved for Anselmi to move forward, excuse me, just a portion of it. So let's just put it into the context of those subdivisions. Anselmi, they've got 2 lots to the west of them that are also going to be substandard. So they will improve their street frontage on 1400. And then 2 lots, one of them owned by the school district, that are also going to be substandard. So we're going to need to figure out, all right, what is the cost? Curve linear foot of this, and then calculate it out to be how many lots can exist on the school property, how many lots can exist on the property just to the west, how many lots are going in your subdivision, and then calculate it out. It's a pretty easy number at that point for them. And they'll be the ones to essentially put that number together.
And they're only required to do section.
Yep, half street. Yes, only their side, because the other side will do their own. Putting it into context for Singletree. Singletree has theirs, and then the school, my understanding of the school is going to do theirs. I'm hoping that's true. And then you got the
Church.
seminary building that we just made sure they got it in their condition of approval. And then you got the church. So really, it's as long as the school does what they say they're going to do, it's just the church linear frontage. And so he's going to do his own 10-acre frontage, and then we need to figure out what is the cost to do the frontage out in front of the church, and then divide that out by, technically there are no other homes from that intersection to where he is, so divide that out by the 30-something homes that he's going to do, or 20-something homes that he's going to do, and that'd be his cost.
You're giving it to the wrong people. They're building ugly seminary buildings with that 10%.
Yeah. Oh, it is good. Good. There you go. I'll chat with the county engineer. Well, if you're looking at asphalt, it's 30. Okay. Oil to oil, what is out there right now is 26. Okay. I'll talk to the county engineer just to verify. So oil to oil and then curb and gutter starts right there. Yeah, we're talking about bringing it to full standard, which would be 30, at least 32, if not 36. So they've already got the curb and gutter in. Okay. I'll talk to the school district, or excuse me, I'll talk to the engineer about the school district. Okay.
The drain was on, the big drain was on the south side of the road.
Okay. Mhm.
So. there- different expectations on including-
The school's gonna tell us, here's for you, here's for your horse. We ain't doing nothing figured out.
Well, they have said that. Now, the county does have some ability to require certain things. Just question is, does the county have the political will to sue? Because that's what it might take. Now, ultimately, when it comes down to the very end, 2,200 for the long term isn't a super significant through street. I mean, it is a through street, but it's not intended to be from the freeway all the way out to West Weaver corridor. Yeah, well, and I guess the reason why I bring that up is the question is if the school's already putting hard improvements in, and the county's not gonna take the school to task for not putting those improvements where they belong. Are we gonna make the developer put the improvements where we would otherwise say they should go? Or do we have the developer put the improvements at 28 feet of asphalt as well?
So put it in for whatever it's designed in the master plan for. If it's 60 foot right away, it goes at 60 feet.
So the right of way width, we would definitely get, that's not a question. It's just hard improvements. What's the width of those going to be? And I'll talk to the county engineer. We might have to go for a drive tomorrow. Because it's the school, they do what they want to do until somebody takes them to task. And yeah, I've got to wait for someone who's above my pay grade to tell me we're taking them to task.
But it's just like in that same aspect, they should improve that road all the way to 4,700 because they're bringing the impact.
So let me make I'm gonna make a counter assertion to that, not even an argument, just a counter assertion. And I'll tell you before I do it, what Commissioner Jenkins said. He said, Charlie, I feel like you pulled that right out of your left pocket. That said, school district being a taxing agency, a public agency, providing a community benefit and betterment just by existing. It could be seen the same way as parks. Now, even though, yeah, a lot of impact, we could say it's a lot of impact, but it's an impact that's driven by that community, it's not by the existence of the district, it's by the existence of all the homes that went out there. So it's a lot easier for me, not that I want to, because the school district has been incredibly hard to work with. It's a lot easier for me to forgive the school district because let's just eat it as a community cost. Because it is the fact that they're putting homes out there. That's
But
driving.
they're attacking you just like we are, and look at the amount of tax revenue they bring in compared to the county.
I agree. I have no disagreement there.
But they bonded for the school.
Oh, yeah, they need all those improvements for the sports fields.
Exactly.
Sorry.
They need a field house.
The sort
Gotta take the mic away.
What I mean by the
Microphone.
bond for the school, for the construction was the fact that that was all figured in their bonding package. The income money, that's the management money. That's paying the teachers and the administration and keeping the lights on, and, that sort of stuff. So, yeah, they're taxing it. I'm not trying to be in disagreement with you guys, but that's the argument to it. And as far as the road goes, yeah, it's going to be busy. But all those subdivisions around there are what brought the school. So there's their other argument to you, which Charlie has already mentioned. So the main road, though, is going to be 1800 south, which is only a block the other direction. So.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It would be nice if their parking lot improvements came off of 1800. It would have worked out a lot better, but they didn't buy all that. Is what it is.
Well, it would have been better if 4300 could go straight through to 12th Street too. That would have helped drive that the other direction.
Yep, I agree.
But that's been done for a long time, so it shouldn't even be brought up, but it was still not the right thing to do it, even at the time. Anyway, what else you got, Charlie?
Well, Mr. Chairman, that was roads. There's a lot more in that document that I handed out to you that I don't intend to go over with you. I'm trying to consolidate and put things back together again. What you'll see next time you see this document is some changes to the RE15 zone. If you flip flip to the back, you've got pathways and pathway improvement requirements. And so there's a lot more that's going to be in here, including dark sky stuff. That's actually the dark sky. I got the dark sky stuff done. So, and dark sky wrote itself because we already had it. I just needed to make sure it was clear for the Western Weaver area as well.
And
Yeah.
that was in this one.
Yep.
So now are we going to go back to the other one?
829. You tell me what you want to do.
Yeah. No,
I'm
Commissioner.
here.
Okay. All right. I think everybody wants to call it a day.
After 6 hours last time and 4 hours today, I think we've done our due diligence in 2 weeks.
So we're going to pick up where we left off on. What's our next meeting? Next Tuesday? No.
Yep.
And that's our regular meeting,
Followed by another one,
work session.
the meeting right after.
The 17th, we need to talk about that one.
Oh, don't, okay, 17th.
We have, 2 of us will not be here. Well, we've got conflicting meetings because that's our water district meeting.
Okay. Do you want to go later, earlier, or different day?
Different day would probably be better because we got the same stuff going on there that takes on.
Okay.
A couple hours there. We start up.
So if you wouldn't mind, maybe have June put out for another day.
Okay.
That whatever works for staff, and then we'll run it past the commission and see how that.
It just becomes an issue because of the holiday that week.
Yeah.
It's typically that meeting's on a Monday.
Carly, is this first document you gave us going to change?
No, I hope not. So
To hold on to it, or do you want to give it back to us the next time we come?
hang on to the first one. Second one, I don't care what you do because it will change. But feel free to read through and shoot me your notes if you have any.
So this one, Kelly?
The form-based one.
Form-based, thank you.
Yeah, that one won't, I'm not planning on changing it. I mean, might make some of the tweaks that we talked about today, but I'll continue to work off of the one that we're using right now. The other thing that we didn't get to when we looked at form base is the street regulating plan. Just have a good close look at it, make sure it fits with what your expectations are, given what each of these streets can do. And other than that, I'm done talking.
All right. Well, thanks, Charlie. And staff and our participation from the public. Appreciate it very much. And I don't think we need a motion to adjourn from a work session, do we?
Nope.
Okay, we're adjourned.